Welcome to the Big Week in Gaming podcast. And what do you know? It's been a big week in gaming. I'm integot for episode 79 on Sunday, the 8th of May, 2022. In this week's show, we'll be discussing Square Enix selling off some of their biggest non-Japanese studios and IP, Kanye West pitching a game to Nintendo's Shigeru Miyamoto, and I review ex-Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé's new book, Disrupting the Game.
Shut up! Bigwig's on the radio! Shut up! It's Gaming from the studio!
As always, I'm joined by the ever-increasingly rude Mike.
Woo! Yeah!
And Swinny.
You're really poking the bear there, Mike.
I am, I love it.
As always, you can find our links in the description or at bigwigpod.com. I actually listened to last week's, a couple of days ago, I should say, Elden Ring review, and you talking in the intro was so annoying.
Oh, shit.
I was actually listening to it. I'm like, man, people must listen to this stuff and go, fuck this guy. What is he doing?
You reckon?
Yeah,
Mike,
Mike,
I just want to see what I need to do to get kicked off the show.
Mike, I don't know if you realize how much you can hear you over the music when you do that.
Yeah, it's like super loud.
Yeah, but do regular people of the podcast want to hear that intro over and over again every week? Let's do a poll. Let's find out. What would they rather
Mike
have?
has never listened to the podcast, right? So Swinny and I have just
will listen to this
listen
one.
to it back. And I was listening to it. I'm like, oh my God, that's so aggravating. Like, it's so loud.
Noted.
No, noted, and we'll object later.
Let's ask our number one fan.
Let's see
Joe
in the
Jives.
chat. Let's see what the
What
chat
do you
says.
think? What do you think? What do you think, Joe? Tell us. Do you prefer just the music every week, or do you prefer some interruptions from yours truly?
I would suspect Joe just wants to watch the world burn.
Yeah, exactly. That's. I know he's chosen that person on purpose. All right, Swinny,
Maybe
you have a
he told
correction?
me to do it.
Yes, I have actually a correction, but because it relates to the spoiler section of our Elden Ring review last week, I can't actually talk about it. So technically, in canon, I didn't get anything wrong. There
Well,
we
I've
go.
deleted the spoiler. By the way, don't say spoiler. It's spoiler.
Spoiler.
Spoiler. That's the canon of the show now.
So no correction.
But can you
correct?
correct yourself without spoiling it?
No, not
Not
really.
really.
No, it's that much of a spoiler.
We'll have to do a point release of that episode. 78.5.1, and you have to correct it. All right.
But I do have a question though. And it's a question I wanted to watch last episode, but Mike wasn't here, and I'm like, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna park this important question.
super
that is
important.
incredibly game related until Mike's here, because I wanted to get his take on this incredibly important topic. And the question is, do you mix milk? Now, I want to explain this. So
Yeah,
let's say
please do.
you've got 2 bottles of milk, one's nearly empty, and let's say you want something like a bowl of cereal that requires more milk than you have in the older milk.
Okay.
Do you put do you mix the two together? Do you mix the new batch and the old batch, knowing that one is like probably near date and the other one is brand new? Or do you say, I'm going to start afresh, so there's no mixing of these 2 batches of milk?
Oh, I've got a clarifying question for this.
Yes.
So, what are the volumes? Are we talking about? There's a 2-liter volume of milk, fresh milk, and you're adding in the old milk to that, or is it into a glass?
No.
Is it into a specific glass to drink?
It's into a glass or into, let's say, a bowl of cereal.
Okay, I think that's super critical. Yeah, I've done that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, do you ever mix 2 batches of milk to?
Okay. Story time. So, when I was born, probably because
Please don't say about breast milk. But yeah, go on. Is it mixed breast milk and goat milk or something?
No, I never did that. But when I was born, quite possibly because of what happened in Chernobyl, my mom couldn't provide titty milk for me. However,
Because of
I ended
Chernobyl.
up getting titty milk from 7 different women, according to her, including a gypsy witch. I was just non-stop titty milk coming straight at me. It was amazing as a baby, I guess. I don't remember any of that, but I was told by my mom that it actually happened. So,
I wish.
to cut a long story short, yes, I think mixing milk is fine.
I wish we could have the title "Breastfed by 7 Women."
Hey,
It's a true story, by the way.
Of all places, I was not expecting this discussion to go that far.
It's very true. And by the way, might I add, I actually drank milk straight from a cow's udder as well.
I've done that. I've done
Yeah,
that as well.
I
That's
just
amazing. The
swallowed.
majority of this show has done that.
It was really good.
Please, someone.
You're missing out, Swinny.
Make
It's
a gift of that
delicious
animation, please.
and
Yeah,
warm.
exactly. Yeah, put something else. Photoshop something else in there.
Something.
don't.
I am a picky eater in general, but for some
very
reason,
much.
the whole milk thing has just always put me off. The idea of
Mixing it.
milk obviously turns, right? It turns over time,
Yeah.
and just the idea of mixing two batches of milk together has always just really irked me. So that's why I knew it was a weird thing that I never did, and that's why I just wanted to check with you guys because I don't think I've ever asked you in all the years I've known you. And
So
I
you
thought,
don't. You
why not
never
ask
mix
you?
it.
No.
Okay.
If I can avoid it, like if I'm like, look,
Wow, OCD to the max.
But what do
That's not saying I've
you
never
so do you
done
just
it, but-
are you just an environmental destructive person and throw it out?
no, I'll use that other milk up, but I won't ever mix it with other milk. So I might.
But
just
you're
put that
drinking
in
it
a
anyway.
glass.
What's the difference? I don't understand.
No, but it's just that's what I'm saying. It's a logical, just the weirdness of mixing
it's really
two batches of
irrational.
milk.
But I get it.
Just is a little weird to me because they're both at different stages of
But then
turning
you
into
average,
whatever they turn
you average
into.
it out, right?
So,
But I
anyway.
thought you were talking about like adding it into an existing milk.
no,
even
That
Who
is
cares?
crazy.
It's
No,
milk.
no, that's different.
What?
That will turn the whole thing. That would
'Cause that's
that
got
will make the
like-
whole
Oh,
thing
is it
bad.
added back to the bottle? No,
Yeah.
no,
That's
you
got
wouldn't
like
add it to the-
bacteria and all
Yeah.
stuff in
Yeah,
it.
yeah, okay.
Fermentation. And,
That's a good way to make cheese or something like that.
Yeah.
Delicious.
What do they call like back to your 7 women? What do they call? There's a name for it. I can't remember. Wet nurse. It's wet nurse, right?
I don't think they were actual nurses. I think it was just said random women at the hospital. And I was like, give me all the titties. And I did. I got all of them, probably.
No, but I think that's what the term is called. You idiot.
I don't know what it's called.
I'm kind of saying to you. I'm pretty.
Okay,
Yeah, I just checked
that's
it.
what
Wet
it's
nurse.
called,
It is.
yeah.
It's where.
Welcome to the
Welcome to the
milk-
wet nurse.
Welcome to the milk podcast, the only podcast about milk on the entire internet, probably.
Sweeney, we need to figure out. Can we have the title as 7 wet nurses?
I'm sure there's some variation of like at the rate this show is going, we're probably going to have 100 different episode titles to choose
I should
from.
just shut up.
All right, let's get into the main body of the show. And this is a bit of an update and an announcement, Sweeney.
Yeah, so we've been talking about Game of Summer in 1995 for a while, but the last feature we did, we're in the middle of the nominee features. For anyone who doesn't know, Game of Summer in 1995 is where we go back to a year, so we chose 1995 this time. Selected a bunch of nominees, and we're going to play through them, and then we're going to select what is the best game of some other year, aka 1995. And we'd gone through, so we'd already done our features on Worms, Full Throttle, Yoshi's Island, Donkey Kong Country 2, and we did Chrono Trigger a few weeks ago, but even that got delayed for a while. And the sixth nominee that we haven't done our feature yet for was Earthbound. So in the last month or so, I think all of us we've talked between each other and kind of given some, the fact that we've had some frustrations with the game. I'm still enjoying Earthbound quite a bit.
But
there
you're
are
a
some-
mad RPG fan. Like we have to give that context for new people. Yeah.
But and in
play
saying that,
anything.
I wasn't the strongest proponent of that being one of the nominees in the first place. So
I'll put
when
my
we-
hand up. I was the one who said it.
So we quickly had a chat last week, but we didn't. We thought we'd actually bring it up on the show about whether or not we're
it is.
actually enjoying playing through a game, and the whole thing of playing through a game because you are obligated to and you feel forced to and you're not having fun. What's the point? We do this show
Sounds
for
like
fun.
life.
We do this show for fun, and there have been a few times when we've had to play games and we're just not feeling it. And I get the impression, and you guys can obviously share your thoughts, that Earthbound is one of them. That we're kind of almost forcing ourselves through it a bit. So
Yeah, and I give a lot of credit to Mike. As lazy as Mike is sometimes, he is true to himself of like, I'm not liking this, stuff it, I'm not doing it. And that's a quality that I think I definitely need to adopt a little bit more. Because this game, I've played it for like 15 hours. And honestly, it's become miserable, right?
Shit.
So, how long have you played it? Have you been playing it?
Nowhere near that. Like maybe 4
Yeah. So I'm not even a fan of Undertale. I tried to play Undertale multiple times. It just doesn't click with me, that game, right? And Earthbound, like, it looks amazing, sounds amazing. Like, there's all the elements are really cool. I love the character designs, but I just find it so grindy and so just annoying the way it's like structured. And just, I'm not having a good time with it at all. And I'm like, oh my God, there's like another 20 hours of this game to beat it. I'm like, this is miserable.
I know we're not doing like an in-depth feature about Earthbound right now, but you know, the inventory system is the thing that's just been really annoying me. The fact that it's so limited and you just constantly having to swap things back and forth.
Yeah, I'm constantly like running out of like health items, or like, you know, I'm trying to like put health items in there so then I can't have other items. And it's like, I feel like I don't have enough spots for anything. So what are we doing? Are we killing Earthbound?
We have our 6 nominees, but we also had like a wider top 10 and including 4 games that we're just going to make a top 10, you know, so we could say this is a top 10 of 1995.
Okay.
I guess we can potentially pull in one of the games from that 4 if we feel that that's right, or we can just relook at some of the ones that were kind of on the outskirts and decide what game should actually be brought in as a 6 if Earthbound is not going to be one of our nominees.
Because just to reiterate, so the 6, so Earthbound was 1, Chrono Trigger, Donkey Kong Country 2, Full Throttle, Yoshi's Island, and Worms. So I think 5 of those we're totally happy with to keep. I think we're bumping like Earthbound out of that 6th spot.
Yeah.
And look, I don't think we're going to go to the effort of going back and playing these games, honestly.
Well, I mean, we can do what we want, really, but I think that, you know, obviously I was trying to really push for Secret of Evermore at the time when we were doing the nominees, but I also understand that we already got Chrono Trigger in there. I guess Earthbound's an RPG, so it'd be swapping an RPG for an RPG. But I'm happy to look at the other options if you guys
Heroes of
want.
Might and Magic. Yeah.
Because what were the other? So we had Heroes of Might and Magic.
Yeah, Earthworm Jim 2.
Earthworm Jim 2, and I think Warcraft.
Heroes of Might and Magic, I've got it. Secret of Evermore and Warcraft 2.
Warcraft 2.
Warcraft 2.
To me,
yeah.
Warcraft 2
I'm voting
is
Warcraft 2.
way above Earthbound. I've played all of these games apart from Heroes of Might and Magic.
I'm
voting that.
I'm happy to put Warcraft 2 in.
All right.
Dunsky.
All right, we swapped it out. Earthbound is out. We're going to have so many haters.
I know.
Probably.
And then we're bringing in Warcraft 2.
Sorry.
So
there you go.
So I guess we will decide. You know, I don't know if we're going to do a feature on Warcraft 2. We can figure that out. But obviously the whole end point is to get to a final GOSOY 1995 episode where we can decide which one. You know, and we were kind of stuck in place trying to figure out what to do there. So
Sweet.
cool.
All right, it is done. It is
Nice.
eliminated. Earthbound is officially a horrible game. We're moving on to what
Move
we're
on with
playing.
my life.
Very good. And Mike, what's the 1 or 2 games you've been playing this week?
So you know how I go from I don't want to play any games because I have a life, blah 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 blah, to I'm just gonna try a whole bunch of games because I want to see if anything clicks. So I've been playing. Let me just list
Sorry,
them.
Mike. Can I just ask? I've got one thing before you get in. I know you always cut off, and I've cut you off.
That's
now,
fine.
but
Cut me off all you want. I don't care.
When there was a chance you might not have been on the show tonight, but you are, right? So that's.
I am indeed.
When you were talking about that, you're like, pretty much just playing Elden Ring. And that was like 2 days ago. So I'm just trying to wonder, did you just forget that you played like
No.
60 bazillion games when you said
I just
that?
posted them all in the chat.
Because
there's so many.
I didn't. So I played them over the course of about the last week and a bit, but they're not. And I will tell you why they're not games I would specifically talk about during the Elden Ring thing. Because I didn't play them long enough. I kind of installed and played them for a few minutes each and went, I can't be bothered with this. Like probably half an hour tops of each one of these. It probably took longer to download than I actually did to play them. Anyway, so Project Cars 3.
Are you really going to go through all 15?
No.
There's a lot of
I
games.
want to give a quick snippet about each one, okay? And the reason why I stopped playing them. So
You're going to talk about them as long as you've played them, but yeah, go on.
pretty much as long as I played this. Project Cars 3 went off the rails. It's an arcadey kind of game now, not the good simmy kind of game that number 2 was. Not my thing. I tried to get into it, couldn't. Forza 7 decided to put it on PC for whatever reason, just because I could play it in a different room. Great. Played that a little bit, got bored because I already clocked it. Deponia, because I wanted to start the series again. You guys know I love Deponia. Yeah. Let me just have a sip of my coffee as well.
I know what is on your coffee cup, by the way, you dickhead.
Okay, right.
This
next.
is the preparation he does. This is the shit he prepares for.
I didn't prepare for it. I just did it now.
Well, that
Anyway.
that's consistent.
No, the next one on the list, Borderlands 3. Great game and everything. I just can't be bothered. I don't know why. I mean, you're a big Borderlands fan, Swinny. You played all of them. I think did you get Tiny Tina's Wonderland? I forget.
No, not yet. I'm waiting.
Not yet. Cool.
No.
Waiting for it to be free on
Great
Game
game.
Pass.
Can't be bothered. Neo. Got to the first major boss, gave up. Too hard. Not really that hard. I actually got way further in that game than this. It's not that bad. I was itching to play something else Souls related after, finishing Elden Ring.
It's like way too hard. No, it wasn't that hard. Yeah,
It wasn't hard enough. No, it's actually not that hard. It's not that bad. If I kept... I played it before. I went way further than that last time. Anyway. Unsold? Wasn't a huge fan. Something about it... Actually, I know what it is. The tutorial is way too long. I don't know if you've tried that one yet, Swinny, for your... Oh, you'll have to give it a crack because it's on Game Pass. Too many tutorials at the start. That is a lesson in over-tutorializing the start of a game, where you're like, you know what, too much. I can't be bothered playing anymore. Subnautica, because for some reason, I was just itching in that moment to play some survival kind of game. And it's always something that I started, never really finished. Again, started, probably will not finish. Anyway, back to my itching about playing a Souls game. I decided to install Dark Souls 2 on Xbox this time. Again, got to this first boss, went, screw it, after I got killed. Anyway, managed to get Skyward Sword HD on Switch, because it was cheap. And I don't know, like you, Integot, I'm struggling to really get into that game. I don't know if it's the controls. I don't know if I just can't be bothered with... I don't know what it is.
It's me. What do you mean it's me?
God, you talk about long tutorials. You talk about long tutorials. That is like the king of.
That is a very.
But
long
I liked
tutorial,
it.
yes.
I just reviewed it. I finished it all.
Yeah, look, I'm gonna keep playing it. But it
I
just
don't know why you're roping me.
didn't
You go,
click.
just
Because
like
I
you,
remember-
Integot. I
No,
didn't
no,
like
I remember,
it. It's like,
I remember
liked it.
the first impression you had when you first talked about it, when you grabbed it. It didn't really grab you that much, if I recall correctly.
I think we both gave our thoughts, and we both said, Skyward Sword's a good game.
Yeah, pretty much.
Whatever. That's not what I remember. You're both wrong. Shut up.
We'll insert it right now, what we said.
Okay. Put it in. Right. So
That's what she said.
Pillars of Eternity on Switch. I thought I'd give that a crack because I got it ages ago. It's actually pretty good for the Switch. The problem is I get overloaded with what the hell class do I pick? Because it's so different. It's not like a typical kind of game where you can just do whatever and it's fine. They're quite vastly different. So I tried a bunch of different classes, tried doing the entire starting era with different classes just to get a feel for them. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't even want to play the rest of this. Red Dead Redemption 2, which I started ages ago, got pretty far into it. I think I'm like 66% of the way through the game, according to the thing. Amazing game, but I couldn't figure out what the controls are. I totally forgot how to play it. So that I just uninstalled it. It's like 100 gigs or something. Anyway, then there's a few games that I actually decided to play, and I'll probably stick with. So the following three I think I will stick to and hopefully finish. So the first one is Days Gone on PS5, which is obviously the PS4 version that is upgraded for PS5. My kind of game, I gotta say, my kind of game. I'm really digging it so far. I love the stealth in it, love the setting. You know, you guys know me. I love post-apocalyptic zombie games and shit like that. So I think I'm gonna stick with this one.
How far into that game are you? Because
Not that far. Why?
Oh, okay. I don't want to spoil it, but that game, there's a feature in that game that they've put, I think it's like 2/3 through the game, where everyone's like, this should have been at the start of the game because it's like an amazing part of the game.
Oh.
But people don't get to it because they're kind of like, it didn't perform that well. Like the actual performance of the game was pretty choppy on the PS4.
Okay,
So,
but they fixed all
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
cool, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, I'm
be
looking
interested
forward
to
to
see what you think of it.
So that one I hope I'll stick with. Now here's one that I didn't talk to you guys much about. Blossom Tales, I believe it's called. It's a Zelda clone
Yeah, I know what it is.
on the Switch. And
It's
I
on
mean,
sale,
it's a
right?
Zelda clone. Yeah, it's $6.99. So far, highly recommend it. I have to actually, you guys are going to hate me for this, but I actually prefer it over Zelda.
If you beat that, and the fact that you didn't beat Link to the Past, I will defriend you.
Oh.
He might
Okay,
be-
I'll
he
get to
might
the
be
end and
honest.
I won't finish it.
Thank
no,
you.
it just clicked with me more. Maybe the humor in it or something. I don't know, because of the way it's told and
That was
the
a
story
joke,
and
by the
stuff.
way. I'm not really going to defriend.
Well, I don't know.
Defriend him. Defriend. Defriend.
But I highly recommend it if you have a Switch, and of course if you're into Zelda, or even if you're not, because I'm not. It's a really cool, fun game.
You really need to give Link to the Past a proper try, man.
I might
You
have to go back to
really
that and
need
give
I
it a proper
think
try.
he
I
would
tried,
like-
Ben. I tried.
I think it'd like Link's Awakening more, to be honest.
Or
'Cause
Link's
that's
Awakening,
quirky,
but
yeah.
I just know that
And
he
shorter.
like didn't know where to go, or like no, that's right. He got to a certain part and he
He just got bored.
quit the game, and he's like, I,
think
don't know
I
what to
did.
do.
It's too many other games that actually captivate me, and then I just couldn't get into it. Like Trek to Yomi. Well, actually, to be honest, Trek to Yomi doesn't really captivate me all that much, but it's cool. It's interesting. So we got some B-roll, I think, for Trek to Yomi, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. B-roll man. So it's
It's very critical.
it's not. A lot of stuff makes it look like it's a side-scrolling kind of game. It's not. It goes into multiple perspectives, but it is generally sort of, especially in battle so far, a 2D plane, and it's set in Japan, all black and white, to emulate that classic Japanese era of filmmaking. And look, mixed feelings about it. I think the aesthetic is really cool, really interesting, but I find the gameplay is just a little lacking. There's something about the attacks not feeling like they're connecting as well. Something about it feels a little shallow in terms of the combat, but at the same time, I am compelled to keep playing it because I love this kind of. It's reminiscent of something like Inside, if you guys or any of those kind of games, but with actual combat, which is super cool. So mixed reviews, not just from me. I think overall in the internet, it's got quite mixed reviews. But I do recommend it so far. I think it's quite cool.
I gave this a little bit of a shot as well. Not much, but it is a beautiful game. But what I found, at least in the early parts, I found it hard to tell, because of the visual style, sometimes it's hard to tell what you can interact with in the environment or what's an exit on the screen. And even things like the save shrines I found were actually difficult to identify as you're walking around. But
I didn't have that issue.
The biggest issue for me, though, is the fact that this game seriously needs some accessibility options in terms of its subtitles and things. There's a lot of times when it will put
Mike.
it will put white subtitles over a white background, and it's basically so difficult to read some of the stuff, and because by default it puts it in Japanese language audio, which you'd expect,
well, which is really cool, by the way.
Yeah, which you'd want to probably play for this style of game with the setting, but that means you have to read the subtitles unless you know Japanese. So I think they really need to do something there to improve that. But yeah, I'm a bit mixed on this. I only played the first hour or so, and yeah, I think Mike, I agree. The combat feels a little I don't know. It just doesn't feel like the hits connect very well.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it. It's a solid experience. It's just I can't even describe what it is. It's weird.
Yeah,
but
anyway,
especially on Game Pass, 100% worth trying. It's a really cool indie game. Definitely worth giving it a crack. So that's me, Integot.
Yeah, nice. Still trying to get through Fire Emblem Three Houses Cindered Shadows. This game is pissing me off, this DLC. I even started reading the reviews about it, and all the reviews are like, man, this is difficult, this DLC. It's way more difficult than the most difficult setting in the main game. I'm like, damn it. And I'm actually like, all right, I don't care. I'm going to get input about the strategy that you need to go into these fights. There's nothing on the internet. It's feels very old school. It feels like I'm back in the Super NES games where it's you kind of just piecing things together. There's no definitive fighting cowboy style, that is the best way to go. So literally I'll go on these wiki guides and stuff and it'll be oh, these are the troops. It's cool. Okay, that gives me a bit of information. And then there's a strategy section and it's just blank. No one's put anything there. I'm fuck. And it's not that long, but it's just I'm getting into a brick wall. Honestly, this is harder than Elden Ring. I didn't get stomped on in any part of Elden Ring I am getting stomped on in this bloody DLC.
Sounds like fun.
I'm like getting so frustrated. I'm like, I might just go back to the main game where I'm stuck in as well. Like, it's horrible. Outside of that, also still playing God of War. I started playing Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, so I thought I just played the latest Kirby game on the Switch. Might as well try the original. It's like, because Dreamland was the first one, right, Swinny? Or was it the NES one?
I think the NES one came afterwards.
That's what I always think. I'm pretty sure it started on the handheld.
Because the NES one actually came out quite late in the NES's life cycle compared to any other game that we generally talk about on the NES.
Yeah, it's the first. Yeah, so 92. And I remember Kirby's Adventure.
Yeah.
On the NES is like 93 from memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yep, that's right. Yeah. Look, I don't know. I feel like a real dumbass, but I'm playing it and I'm like, wait, like, where's the copy abilities? And I'm like, are there no copy abilities in this game at all?
No, I think they added that in the second one.
Oh, so
That's
Kirby
crazy.
started without the copying ability. So what abilities does he have? Does
Well,
he still float?
He can spit the stuff back out at.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but
And
it's
he
no
can
copy
float,
ability.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, no, just getting through that. So I'll try to finish that. And then the last one is I have gone back to Switch Sports, and finally and he's almost a character on the show now. But my wife's dad, who's like a bit of a tech head and he loves this kind of stuff, he finally came over to play Switch Sports, and I was so nervous because he's exactly the person that would throw a Joy-Con into the TV.
Saying that.
I'm like legit more worried about him than my kids, right? And then I gave him the Joy-Con and I strapped it in, and then I realized that I gave him the one with the wonky like Joy-Con sliding thing, these sliding things. This bit here that slides on.
How much does a new TV cost?
His one was like loose, and I was like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, like, look, Switch Sports, like I said in the review, it doesn't capture the magic of Wii Sports because that was so unique and new to everyone, but it's just so easy to just pick it up and give it to people. And it's sort of like, it made me reflect, and I'll talk about the Wii U later, just like how it's almost like you have to explain the Wii U and functionality in Nintendo Land and all those games, versus this game is just like hand it to someone and then they could just kind of like, there's like literally one or two or no buttons to press and you can just play it. But one thing is, as I mentioned in the review, there's like limited items that go out. Like, and Mike, you hate that stuff. But I was like, I really want to get those items before they expire. So I actually started playing like the kind of battle royale bowling to get the items. I'm like, I got to get these items. Then I'm like, I don't like losing. I'm very competitive. So I started looking at guides on how to bowl effectively to get like consistent strikes and stuff. So I'm trying to practice that. I'm getting pretty close to getting like strikes on most goes. So.
Got to beat those 12-year-olds online who are playing Wii bowling.
Pretty
Sorry,
much.
Nintendo Sports bowling.
And I forgot that the game actually has pro leagues. So now I'm in ranked. So it's like it literally is just like any ranked thing.
Okay.
You go up
Wow.
ranks and you get booted back if you don't, get that step up. So I think there's like A ranks what you need to get and everything. So yeah, I don't know, man. This Switch Sports game, it's just because I can play it actually on my desk. Like I'll put the Switch up.
At work?
No, not at work, but just when I was doing stuff, prepping for the show and stuff, I had it running. Because it's like, okay, it's my turn to bowl.
It's his new Rocket League.
It is his new Rocket
I
League.
did, like,
Rocket Bowling League. Wow.
the soccer in it. I literally think of Rocket League when I play it. I'm like, all right, there's too many idiots pushing forward. I need to start defending and make sure they can't score on us.
You just wait for Gravity Goal, Ubisoft's take on Rocket
Yeah,
League.
that looks all right. There's a few games that, look like pretty decent. I was very close to installing Rocket League again as well. So I was like, and you know how I got triggered? There's two, what are they called? Hot Wheel Rocket League cars that I've got.
Those. Yeah.
Well, I've got a bunch of them, but I've got two inside of my PC case. Like, set up.
Cool.
And I saw them and I was like, Rocket League.
Wow.
And I got so close to installing it. I was like,
So
no.
this guy only puts one fan in his PC, but he puts two Hot Wheel cars in there.
Hey, I'll check I'll stack my thermals up against your tthermals.
They absorb the heat.
Exactly.
If Joe, if you can hear this, what the F, man?
And Swinny. What are you
Yeah,
doing,
so look, first I just wanted to talk about two things. So one is a funny moment that happened to me this week, a bit of an embarrassing moment. Basically, where I'm preparing for my Final Fantasy battle system tier list. So, I haven't spoken to Integot about it, but I'm like, okay, let's see if I can prepare a bit of B-roll. So if we want to show some of the battle system, blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking up Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy 13. And I'm like, okay, look for some B-roll. I'm like, oh, this clip looks great. The, really good clips of the battle system. And then it has, lightning running around. But I couldn't understand. The player was just running into walls or just like running up against a light post for like 5 seconds. And I'm like, what is this idiot doing, man? Like the rest of this footage is awesome. And as I go to leave, I glimpse the name of the YouTube channel. It is literally Legally Blind Final Fantasy Gamer. That is the name of the YouTube channel.
Wow. I'm going to take that quote. What is this idiot doing?
And I'm like, oh no. I'm like, oh, so that's, I just love the fact they named their channel exactly what it is. It's just great. So that was a bit embarrassing.
Can I veer into like dangerous territory? Because have you guys ever watched anything from Carl Pilkington? Like Ricky Gervais, Carl Pilkington?
A little bits here and there, yeah.
Yeah. There's something about Carl Pilkington, he loves the bizarre and freaks and all this kind of stuff, and it's very like non-PC, but I think he's doing it from very like he's just fascinated, right? And I don't know if you ever seen, there's a whole bunch of like Twitch streamers with like disabilities, so like they have to play the game with their chin and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I get like fascinated by this shit. I'm like watching it, I'm like, this motherfucker is so much better than me, and he's fucking beating games with his chin, right? And it's not like he's got like a hacked controller. He's got a fucking like regular controller beating it with his chin and nose and shit like that. And I feel like I'm watching it. I'm like, I don't know, is this bad that I'm watching this and so fascinated by it?
I mean, they're putting themselves
cool.
out there.
Yeah,
They want people to watch them,
Yeah.
even if it's out of curiosity of how someone does actually play games. It's like
impressive,
that.
man.
So,
Yeah, I'm not like laughing at the guy or anything like that. So yeah, I'm just like
You're
fascinated.
more laughing at yourself for how much you suck.
Not
I'd be
even.
the
I
same.
was just impressed. I was like, wow, this is like really this. This is probably the bad part that I'm going to say. Honestly, it was just way more impressive than anything in the Paralympics. Because to me, it's like, hey, he's competing against me in the same sport, and he's beating my ass, right?
Fair
like,
point, yeah.
That's to me more interesting than like you've got a wheelchair. Well, maybe I'll beat you if I was in a wheelchair.
No, you wouldn't.
So no, I'm just saying that. Anyway, going back to you, Swinny.
Yeah, so I also carved out a bit of space here because I got a Swinny rant.
Oh.
I got
okay.
so pissed off this week about something that I'm not going to bring it up until the show.
I need stingers.
It annoyed me to no end.
Can we do this as an improvement to the show? I need to do stingers. Like Swinny rant.
Swinny.
And then there needs to be like Mike random.
Yeah,
Grinds my gear.
Mike off topic.
Mike off topic. Yeah.
I have a massive bone to pick with two companies. And
Ooh,
one of these
two
companies is also being talked about later. Companies.
Can we add them right now to get them involved in the
Yeah.
combo?
Two companies, Microsoft
Okay.
/ Xbox, and
I know of them.
I think I
And
know what you're going to random
and
about.
Square Enix.
Oh, that company.
Okay.
Didn't they just sell a bunch of shit?
Anyway, I'll explain. This week, Xbox announces games that are leaving Game Pass, and we've always complained that they don't give people.
And I'm
Enough
I'm,
notice.
Time,
the biggest
Yeah.
complainer
Yeah,
about this.
yeah, it's horrible.
It's bullshit.
Right?
2 weeks. It's bullshit.
So what game did they announce is
Most
leaving
of my
Game
X is
Pass?
just poof.
All right, let me finish this whole thing, otherwise it'll take forever. They announced that the remaster collection of Final Fantasy X and X-2 are leaving Game Pass in like 8 days.
the collection. So both.
That's a collection of 2 games that take about 100 hours each to fully complete, right? That's not even what I'm ranting about, but that is fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Give people more notice about that shit. What I'm going to rant about is something that's very specific annoyance to me as someone that hunts for achievements, but also is a massive issue for people that only have PC Game Pass. So what they did with this game, last week, they stealth delisted the game from purchase without giving any warning at all. When that game leaves Game Pass, you cannot purchase that game at all. So anyone that has a save file on the PC version of Final Fantasy X and X-2 Remaster right now, when that game leaves Game Pass, they cannot play that game. They cannot
Well, you
purchase
can't
that game.
re-download it even if you have it
It's a
already
Game Pass. No, it's a
purchased?
Game Pass. No,
It's a Game Pass game, but you
I'm
can
saying-
buy it on Steam.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
If
so
you've
if you-
already-
yeah,
Yeah, but
gotcha.
you can't use your save file on Steam from the Microsoft Store, so that doesn't even
Yeah.
help. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
use that save file on the Xbox console
Okay,
because
wow,
it
that
doesn't
sucks.
transfer across. Now, obviously, for someone that's into achievements, the idea is okay. Well, even if that game leaves Game Pass, I can just buy it and then whatever, right? So I went and got the other games. I purchased them because this is the only game that has this issue with it. But the fact that they didn't even announce it's been delisted, you can't even download it on Game Pass right now through the app or through the Microsoft Store unless you know some weird back-end link that someone on True Achievements found.
You have to have the NFT for it.
So basically, if you have Game Pass now and you wanted to play the game before it left, you can't even download it easily. So they've just absolutely fucked people over on PC Game Pass with that. So you know what that means? I'm going to do this. This is very big for me.
Oh, here we go. Oh, I know what he's gonna do.
What is he going to do?
Look at his Xbox. Look at the light. Oh no!
Oh, no, he
Shit.
didn't. Oh,
He's
no,
turned
he
off.
didn't.
Just for the viewers, he's turned, and for the listeners, he has turned off.
It's
his
not enough to turn it
Xbox
off.
Live.
It's not
And then
enough
he-
to turn it off. I've removed it from the shelf.
Moved it from
He does have like 5 360s, right? Like in a row.
Now, some people theorized it could be an error, and damn hope it is, because otherwise I won't be able to ever complete that game, so it'll be frustrating.
Can you super
Anyway.
glue your Xbox?
Swinny
Wait, no,
ran-
wait, stop.
Swinny ran over.
But let's clear the wording. It's not that you can never. It's not that you can never complete the game. You can go buy it on Steam or whatever and complete
No,
it.
no,
or-
achievement-wise, I can never
yeah,
complete
correct,
it. Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Oh
All right.
shit, man! So you can never then wait. But is this PC only? You've beaten it on the Xbox, right?
I mean, I've nearly finished on Xbox.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So a quick list.
Well,
of
no.
few
Wait, can I
games.
add to this? So, because PC Game Pass is bullshit, right? When they bought Bethesda, they're like, we're adding all the Doom games onto PC. Check it right now. You still, to this day, since they announced that, to this day, you still cannot play Doom 2016 on Game Pass PC. It's fucking crazy. They're like, people constantly tweet at them.
check.
They're like, why can't I play Doom 2016? You've bought it all. You added every single Doom game. Doom Eternal, everything, apart from Doom 2016 for some reason. And it's still the case today. It's fucking insane. Hey, can you send me a tweet, Swinny? I want to tweet back at them and add up all the hours of all the games that are leaving. And you go, you've given us 2 weeks, which is this how many hours, and these games on how long to beat take this much time. Fuck you, Microsoft.
There's a lot of people raising this on Microsoft support channels and stuff.
I think
so,
just 4
yeah.
weeks. I think that's fair. Even with these super long ass games, if you give 4 weeks, I think that's fair.
But the point is, the whole thing is, they say, oh, Game Pass, you can purchase the games as well to continue
Yeah.
playing them, and you can't even do that. Anyways, a few games I want to talk about. So, the first is a game, these are all Game Pass games. Now I'm going to talk about Game
Now I'm
Pass.
going to pump up Game Pass.
So as-
Game Pass, stupid
as-
Microsoft. Let me tell
as
you how
part
good it
of
is.
as part of my resolution, to try out every Game Pass game, I generally do this every week. So the first game is a game called Research and Destroy. So this game is, I was hoping you wouldn't use this part of the footage, but that's all right. I gave you a
Nah,
trailer.
I don't look at your
No,
instructions.
because
I
I
just do
didn't.
whatever I want.
No, because the tutorial, I wanted to show the other footage, but that's fine.
Swinny's such a whinger. But yeah, go on.
Okay, so this is a turn-based third-person shooter mixed with a bit of a management sim. So basically, it's got some XCOM vibes, but it's basically got 3 characters, you move them around, and there's a timer for each one. At the end of that timer, you can obviously take actions and shoot and everything. At the end of that timer, it moves to the enemy's turn. Outside of the actual action levels, it's then you control a little car on a map of Europe that's got all it basically the plot's weird. It's all the humans went out of existence, but there was a few scientists in a bunker, and then I don't know, thousands of years later they came back or something like that. But it's it's a map of Europe, and you put your scientists down, you research things, you upgrade your weapons and things. And I've got to say, this game's actually pretty fun. I don't think I'll stick with it just simply because there's just so many games. But I think it's actually, if you like some turn-based third-person shooters, it's pretty rare genre. I think this would probably be up your alley. So
Super rare because it's like XCOM, from what I can tell, but you can actually control when you do your action and the shooting, as opposed to XCOM, where it's just random. So you could be right in front of them, shoot, and you miss, kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. When I was playing, I played about 4 of the action levels. It didn't seem like I was missing any shots. There was definitely
Okay.
it definitely doesn't have any real RPG elements that I could see, but maybe there's stuff gets unlocked. You know, XCOM's got some light RPG elements there. But I actually thought it was pretty cool. I didn't know what to expect with it, and
cool.
it's got a cool sense of humor as well. So that's Research and Destroy. And thank you for changing the B-roll into it.
It's okay.
The next game, and I believe Mike's also played this, is Loot River. So I didn't know what this game was, but then when I played it, I remembered what it was because I had seen it. This is almost, I liken this to be a cross between Hyper Light Drifter, Dark Souls, and a sliding puzzle, which is a weird kind of mix. But when you actually see the game and you actually see what happens in it, it kind of, to me, it makes sense. Because when your character is moving around, each area of the ground is split up into almost like Tetramino style pieces. Some bigger, definitely, than Tetraminos. But you then use the right stick to slide that piece of the ground around. So it's got a puzzle element to it, but then mixed with a Dark Souls style combat system where it's all about parrying. It definitely feels Souls-like as opposed to some games that, you know, I say that. This definitely feels like it's got a lot of elements from that. But it's also apparently a roguelike with permadeath and procedurally generated levels. And I honestly didn't play far enough to see that really come to fruition because I didn't really enjoy this game. I don't know about you, Mike.
No, exactly the same. I first of all, the whole roguelike thing just puts me off, but same here. I didn't really get far enough to experience that enough. I died a bunch of times, but yeah. To me, I think the thing that let it down is it got kind of, I don't know, the art style is really cool, but at the same time, it made it kind of hard to figure out what was going on the screen compared to other games. Which, yeah, it's really weird because awesome concept. Love the idea. I love the concept. Love the way the battle system would work, being a Souls lover. But something about the screen and it's hard to tell what an enemy's about to do, what you're doing. It's just, yeah, it didn't.
Like
Didn't click.
you literally lock on like Dark Souls as well, and I couldn't figure out how to easily swap between. You know, Dark Souls you flick the right stick, and it wasn't doing it for me. So I'm like, I couldn't get that. But I think the issue for me was they straight up front they're like, okay, this is how you parry enemies and you riposte. You know, just like Dark Souls. And half the time I couldn't tell did my character actually do it because you know Dark Souls it gives you a very specific noise of like doom when you parry someone, so you know exactly you've done it. It wasn't clear with this one, but. As I said, I only played through the very start of the game. I just knew it wasn't for me, but I know there's some people that do like it. So,
along with the sound in Dark Souls, there's a lot of visual clarity because your character is taking up, what is it, like maybe 5-10% of the screen real estate. Whereas in this game, and I'm just looking at in the B-roll, honestly, it's like 3% or 2% of the like the screen size, right? So it's like, if those things are really subtle, it'd be really hard to tell what the hell's going on. It looks interesting, but
in something like Dead Cells, you can clearly see you see the choreographed attacks and stuff in a game like that. But I think percentage-wise, if you look at it that way, Dead Cells feels like the character is also a little bit larger. But maybe because it's a 2D plane, it's easy to understand what's going on. And it's a shame because I feel like the concept's really cool and it's got really good potential. It's just I don't know how they would fix something like that.
I'd like to play like a twin stick shooter with that sliding puzzle idea. To me, that was the kind of game mechanic that would feel a bit more cooler with this style. But yeah, anyway,
it's interesting about the whole roguelike thing right at the moment because it does feel like the industry is a bit inundated in the indie space with rogue lights and likes, and it doesn't turn me off automatically because I think a game like Hades and Enter the Gungeon, I love those games, but when they don't work, it kind of like, I don't know, there's something about the lack of the handcrafted levels that just, you know, if it doesn't click straight away, I feel like I reject the game a lot quicker. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
So that was Loot River. And the last game I'll talk about is a game that I've been wanting to try for a long time, but there's obviously reasons why I hadn't yet. And that is Bug Snacks. So Bug Snacks finally got added to Xbox this week. Or I think it was this week or last week.
Yeah, recently, yeah.
And it wasn't on Xbox before, so it's jumped straight in Xbox Game Pass. I think I love this game. I absolutely love it.
Really?
And, yeah, I think this game
Damn.
is awesome. It is.
You haven't beaten it yet.
No. So,
And can I just ask before you go on, just so I understand, do you know what happens in this game?
I'm very aware of some of the stuff that happens in this game.
Sucks. Okay.
Well, the things I never thought I didn't know if it ever get added to Xbox. So back when I was listening to a lot more podcasts than I do these days, I heard a lot of people talking about this game at the time.
Yeah.
But the actual game itself, I actually really like the way it's designed. The characters are really super interesting, really well voice acted. It's actually the narrative hook about, like, what is the secret behind the bug snack? So you're a journalist that goes to the island and you go to the settlement, and then you're basically doing quests for all these villagers, and you get to learn, their relationships. And there's moments where they're just talking to each other in certain scenes that are really very realistic, like in how they portray people, dialogue between people. And it really is surprising because you look at this game and you don't get that impression. It's definitely not a kid's game in that regard. A kid could watch this game and it's fine, but it's not a kid's game in the sense of, I think what you get out of it is really, like just learning the relationships between these characters. But I actually really like the design of how you actually catch the bug snacks and the tools you get. I do wish, and maybe there's a way to do it, I don't know, wish there was. It's just a little awkward swapping between the tools at the same time when you need to use multiple tools to like lay down a trap and use like a hamster ball tool to like guide a bug snacks into the trap, and you're constantly having to go into the radial menu to swap between the tools, and it feels a little wonky, but I think you get used to it as you play more and more. But yeah, I really like this game. It's not going to be for everyone, but I implore people to look past what looks like a kid's game and a ridiculous game and actually give it a shot, because I think it's really cool. So.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, dude. Yeah. I saw that you had it in the docket, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to be fascinated to see your take on it.
Cool.
I'm surprised you didn't do a rant on, like, maybe you're not getting affected by all the outages with Microsoft this week.
I haven't been affected by it. I know that a lot of people are, but I also didn't know how widespread it was. I know it was widespread enough that it got like raised on some news sites and things. But the thing is, like, often this stuff is out and down, and I'll see it on True Achievements because I've got like a status thing, and other places won't talk about it. So I guess I should have clicked with me that it was more widespread that other people were.
Yeah, it seems like, well, because especially if you're more digital only, you're been really screwed. And it's probably not our hours. It's more like, the 4 a.m. to the morning time for us, and it hasn't probably hit our timing as much. But it's just another reason why I get really pissed off with the DRM on Microsoft's side. Because like with Nintendo and PlayStation, you can still play the games if you're offline. But some of these like Microsoft games, you can't even play them. Like even if you own them and everything like that, it has to connect at some point.
Yeah, well, sometimes it also depends on what account is using it.
Yes.
Because it's weird that Microsoft, sometimes it's like you got two accounts logged in and one's the primary account for their console, like and that can play. Whatever, right? Yeah, other games you try to launch them and it will say you have to be online. But there's
like that.
Yeah, there's currently no issues reported, so it must have been cleared up. But I know it did affect a lot of people.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Cool.
All right, cool. Let's jump into the news. The Square Enix has dropped a bombshell this week as they announced that they've sold off some massive studios and IPs to Swedish conglomerate Embracer Group.
Whoops. I'm going to fix that one in edit.
So those studios include Crystal Dynamics Eidos Montreal and Square Enix Montreal. And the IPs are massive. So we've got Tomb Raider, which, like, we'll get to the purchase price, but Deus Ex, Thief, and Legacy of Kain. So the deal does not include any Western IPs such as Just Cause, Outriders, and Life is Strange. It will include more than 50 back catalog games from Square Enix. So the total purchase price was $300 million US. It's expected to close in a few months, and there's more than 1,000 employees over the 3 studios and 8 locations globally. Square Enix have said the deal is, quote, it enables the launch of new businesses by moving forward with investments in fields such as blockchain, AI, and the cloud, end quote. They didn't have the NFT thing like they did at the Christmas note or the New Year's note at the start of the year. So Swinny, as given that you've played most of these IPs in your sort of, more impacted, I guess you could say, with Tomb Raider and then also Deus Ex, which we both like. How do you feel about this?
Well, I was very surprised, given that as you were alluding to, like the strength of these IPs, especially Tomb Raider. Like, I wouldn't ever expect a company to sell off an IP like Tomb Raider. But I'm also very optimistic now because we know that some of these IPs, especially something like Legacy of Kain, that people have wanted to bring back for so long.
Yeah.
Thief as well. I know the last one didn't set the world on fire, but people still love that franchise. And obviously Deus Ex, we know that Square Enix are very hesitant to bring that game back, and everyone that series back. I'm really optimistic that Embracer Group will actually do something with these properties, and potentially even re-release, and this is what I'm super excited about, re-release things like some older Tomb Raider games again in like a remastered form. That is easy money in my impression, from my perspective, and it's something I would really love to see. So,
I find that this acquisition, it almost doesn't make sense to me. Like when I heard it, and then you see the IP, I'm like, is this for real? This seems insane to me. That's $300 million.
As in, you think it's cheap, or
Dude, to me, this might go down as one of the greatest deals. Like I was always saying Insomniac, ballpark from memory, Insomniac was like 200 mil or something like that. You got to remember, dude, like Bethesda, what was that? $8,000 million? 8,000. And this is 300, right? Like Activision Blizzard, which to be fair, is like the amount of IPs and everything like that. That's like 68,000 million. And this is 300.
You're right. This is cheap, especially for big IPs like this.
And the thing that I don't understand about this deal is like Lara Croft and Tomb Raider. I mean, they've had 3 films in that sort of franchise, and just how, video game films are doing at the moment. I feel like you could make a film that will make this money back. You know what I mean? In one go.
Just in a single film, yeah.
Yeah. And I like, because, the Sonic 2 movie is now over, I think, 350 million, like, box office.
Wow.
So,
but do you get the rights? I mean, do we know the details? Do you
I'm
get the
assuming
rights
that,
for film
but
or just games? Or how
I
does it work?
feel like that would have been called out in the deal. Like,
Surely.
You surely would have been called out in some way.
Merchandise?
Yeah.
Anything like that?
I'd take, well, because they're saying they own the IPs.
Yeah, so they should be able to.
Fuck, man. Like, when I saw this deal, I was like, damn, this is like... And also, these studios are not terrible studios. Like...
No, they're great studios.
they're some of the best studios in the world.
Exactly. And you know what? I think
it's fucking crazy, this deal, honestly. Like,
absolutely.
Insomniac have barely got any IPs. Like, they're a really good studio. They make great games. Spider-Man consistently ranks on the PS4 as top 5 games on that console, right? Like, but they don't have that many IPs. Like... This is crazy, this deal. Like, really good studios and then really strong IPs and, like, good secondary IPs as well that you can make good games about.
Look, personally, I think it's ultimately really good for gamers. I think hopefully the studios will do something really good with these IPs. The latest Tomb Raider games were actually really solid games. I haven't completed all of them, but they were great games for the kind of genre that the games are. Really, really good. Visually, gameplay-wise, fantastic. Thief, the latest Thief, didn't really get as well reviewed, so I think there's potential there to actually grow that franchise, and come up with a few really good Thief games, and I'm actually looking forward to see what they do with that, because those games were amazing in their own sort of way, in their own unique type of gameplay. And one thing that I would say is I am glad that they're getting rid of Deus Ex. If it's one game that I don't want it to be NFT'd and turned into all that bullshit. I mean, look at all the praxis points bullshit that the previous one had. It was a minor thing, right? It wasn't anything big. But you can kind of tell that we're going into that direction where you could just literally buy as many upgrade points as you want to make the game trivial, with real world money. And I'm not saying that, whatever company takes this on board isn't going to do something like that. But
I mean, Embracer Group.
Embrace the group, yes. You know what I mean. I just think I'd rather not see that franchise be turned to shit by a company like. Let's face it, I've lost respect for Square Enix completely. They made some of my fondest games, but with the shenanigans recently, they're in my blacklist at the moment. So they are. I just think the entire push to NFT thing automatically just puts them into a shit position in my
I still
mind.
don't understand how Grand Theft Auto has evaded your blacklist. Like all the bullshit things
I know.
studio's done. Like
They've
complete
done a
bullshit. Like
lot.
sell
I
the
know,
same
I know,
game.
I know,
on
it should.
3 generations now.
Yep.
Forcing
Maybe
you to buy
'cause
it over and over again.
Well, here's the thing I
forcing
justified
people
because
to
look at
choose.
the latest version was what, $15 or something, and I'm like, I'll pay $15 for an upgrade. I haven't spent a single other dollar on that in terms of the online shit, but
You know, it's interesting about Thief because I always feel like that's a very mixed game. Like, and it feels like a cult classic. Like, there's a lot of people I respect their opinion, and they just rave about how good Thief is.
it was a really good game, the original one.
I'm actually really keen to play it because I rate some of these people who are like, "Oh no, Thief's really good. Like, you need to just stick with it a bit," and it really like
The new
blows your
one, you
mind.
mean, or the originals?
No, the new one. I don't know.
Well,
Have
the
you ever
origi-
played it, Swinny?
Yeah, I have. I was okay. I didn't get far enough into it to say whether or not I thought it was great or not. The originals are like absolutely beloved though,
Yeah.
like Thief: The Dark Age and all that stuff. But yeah, with this, I guess you've probably got more to say about the general deal. But I do want to talk a bit about Embracer Group.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so when this deal came up again, like I constantly, each time Embracer Group buys a company, and this is the most high profile they've done in a while. I know they bought Gearbox, but Gearbox isn't on the level of Tomb Raider in terms of mass appeal and everything. Their games, obviously Borderlands, but Tomb Raider's Tomb Raider. Everyone's like, oh, Embracer Group, who are they every single time? And I remember hearing years ago, and that they were essentially buying up all these smaller studios and growing over time to the point where I was looking at, and these were just, these are all Wikipedia stats, so grain of salt, but they're currently, as of, I think, 2021 financial year, the 17th biggest gaming company in terms of revenue. So, and you look at all the companies above them, they're all household names almost, So Embracer Group is basically, they formed off, they originally, you had Nordic Games, and there was, different, you got the holding company and you got the brand and everything. Then when THQ went under, they turned into THQ Nordic. And eventually, I think it was in 2019, to separate the company that owns all the the studios and everything from the THQ Nordic brand. Then they got renamed to Embracer Group. But we're talking about, acquisitions over time. So they bought Gearbox, Koch Media. That's my best. Koch.
Yeah, it's
Koch Media.
No, it's meant to be called Coke Media.
Coke Media. Saber Interactive, Piranha Bytes, fuck yeah. Like 3D Realms, Beamdog, Dark Horse, like the comics, Perfect World. They bought so many companies, especially over the last 4 years, that it's just like, it's crazy. And now they go ahead and buy these things off Square Enix. It's kind of wild. They're positioning themselves to be a massive force in the industry.
Well, what their strategy, in my opinion, is, I don't know if you guys know Blumhouse Productions.
Yeah.
So they're the folks behind things like Get Out, a whole bunch of horror movies. But essentially, what they do is they're not trying to make AAA movies, like the equivalent in the movie terms, I guess in video game terms. They're making movies that are like 10 mil budgets, 20 mil budgets, 5 mil budgets, but it's like shotgun approach, like peppering the market with like lots of different movies, and some of them are just like exploding and like a massive hits and raking in $500 million, and they're putting in 10 mil for like however many projects, and it's paying massive dividends. And I feel like Embracer Group has seen this approach because they've been doing this for a long time. And it's kind of adopting the same mentality. And I think it's really clever of, games have become too much like just indies and AAA games. Like there's nothing in the middle. And I feel like they're trying to occupy that middle space of like, okay, it's not going to be a AAA budget. And I genuinely think like from now on, Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Legacy of Kain, Thief, I'll consider them like AA. Like I feel like that's the kind of money that they'll put into those games. But maybe that's not a bad thing, because I think it's also, you probably have the games quicker and just be a smaller, tighter game, which I'm personally a fan of. So,
Yeah, but don't kill these beloved franchises, please, with a shitty game.
but I don't think they've really been doing that. Embracer Group, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's still like they bought Piranha Bytes, and Elix still felt like a Piranha Bytes game.
Yeah.
Like the previous games they were they weren't owned by.
No,
by
I
them.
just mean through the strategy of trying to push games out quicker rather than getting them done right.
I know, but I
This
think
is-
it's just like you allocate the budget, and then that's the game, right? Because like you look at Red Dead Redemption 2, you played that, right? The amount of like technology they had on the horse balls to bounce, like, and all this. Do you really need that?
Crazy.
It's like, that's what happens when you have budget. You just go nuts. So
The key part of this to me is the fact that they've bought Crystal Dynamics, they bought Eidos Montreal, they bought the talent behind these games. It's not like they've just bought the IP, so that's
Yeah.
why I have confidence. Now, who knows how it's going to turn out? But I'd be okay. Like my thoughts on the newest Tomb Raider games. I prefer the Crystal Dynamics first trilogy. And I really hope that, as I said, like I hope we get a chance to play those again on newer platforms. But I think those studios, the one thing we didn't clarify as well is I don't think it's clear at this point if they've got the publishing rights to the Marvel games.
no, definitely not.
Yeah, so that's one thing that it's just not. Obviously, they're made by Crystal Dynamics. Dynamics worked on the Avengers, and Eidos Montreal worked on Guardians
Yeah.
of the Galaxy. It makes sense that Square Enix will probably retain those publishing rights to those games.
Yeah,
But,
100%.
yeah, so
Yeah, and I'm like, I feel like all those games are sort of dead now. Where like Marvel's Avengers felt pretty dead, but maybe it's a bit unfortunate with Guardians of the Galaxy, which Mike, you liked.
It's a solid game, yeah. I like
and a lot of people liked it, but you kind of wonder if you're gonna get DLC or anything for that game now.
yeah, who knows? I'm super looking forward to hopefully a new Deus Ex game. And
Yeah,
we know
same.
we know the new Tomb Raider game is in the works. So Crystal Dynamics did talk about that already. So that's obviously going to fall under. Who knows? Like I'm guessing because the way that Embracer Group work is they have their kind of basically the subsidiary publishing brands, and I wonder what they're going to do with this because you've got stuff breaking down into divisions already with them. Like Gearbox is one of them, so I wonder what they're going to. Maybe they'll just do Eidos, as the division name or something like that.
Yeah, it's actually hard to just get a list of the games coming out from Embracer Group because there's like they've literally split it into like you said, the different entities.
Yeah.
And when you even combine them, it's like there's a game coming out every month from this organization, which makes sense. I think they've had like 63 acquisitions or something like that. Actually, you've got it in the run sheet, don't you? 62 acquisitions.
Yeah. And also,
It's crazy.
I don't know if this is probably unrelated, but last year we covered on a show the rumors that Square Enix themselves were up for sale, which potentially could have been them looking at potentially
100%.
offshooting their IPs and stuff. So that was back in April. So if you want to check that out, it's on episode 40, hex code 3B4696.
One of the best titles. Just a bit of a hype for my review of Disrupting the Game by Reggie. I think, in that book, it talks about the tension between Japan and, the Western companies. I think that's like the last thing I wanted to say about this is just like Square Enix being truly like a Japanese company just could never make the Western side of it work. And it just seems like they hated the Western part of Square Enix, which because I don't, like I'm a bit of a nerd with the business side of things. I would like read the investor calls, what Square Enix was talking about, and they're just shitting on like their Eidos Montreal and everything, like calling out, oh, it's performed so poorly and like we expected more and like, but it wasn't in a way that was like what you would say to people to motivate them. Like it was so brutal. And I was just like, shit, man. Like I'd be hating these people if I was running the studio over there.
Well,
so
IO Interactive got the hell out.
Yeah.
The Hitman games.
that's true. I feel like they probably, came out the best, right? Because they got Bond now. So, okay, cool. All right,
I'll be
let's
back in a tick, boys. Gotta go install Tomb Raider. That B-roll looks sick.
I feel like he actually is going to go.
We'll cover this then. We'll cover
Yeah, I
in
know.
his
Like,
absence.
it's the worst timing. All right, let's share our 3 memories of Melbourne's EB Games Swanston Street. Sorry, like I'm gonna read this again from the start because I'm like making it up in my head and reading it. So Melbourne's EB Games Swanston Street has closed the Nintendo experience, which was located on the store's 2nd level. So the report came from our good friends over at Vooks.net. The Nintendo experience opened 14 years ago and became the closest thing Australia has had to an official Nintendo store. It was used by Nintendo for midnight launches, special events, and community tournaments. It was recently revamped in 2018 to add Switch stuff, and the area's closed off with a staff-only sign, and all stock has been removed from shelves. Swinny, share your memories of this space.
Look, I really enjoyed going to there. I actually worked around the corner for a few years, down at Flinders Lane, and this is essentially at the top of where, it's not far from where Swanston and Flinders cross. This is obviously a very Australia-heavy segment on the show, but
all right.
But it was just really cool. You go up there, you obviously had the actual retail part, but then just being able to walk around and try the kiosks, and there was always students there, had a around playing Smash Brothers. I know they held tournaments there. It was just it wasn't big, but it was a cool little space that just felt like a really cool thing there. And look, I know the reporting, it's obviously they've closed it off. We don't know. I think they're still waiting for a response from Nintendo of Australia about, is it something they're bringing back at all? But given, that retail's had struggled throughout the pandemic year and everything, it wouldn't surprise me if they just closed it for good, which is a shame. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really did. So.
Yeah. I think like if you're Nintendo, it's just something like this would never be made today. And what I'm saying is like a Nintendo area in another company's space and retail space.
Yeah.
Like having a Nintendo store in Australia, I could see that. Like that wouldn't be a big shock to me. You've seen recently like a lot of like Lego stores and stuff like that. I feel like because it's really all about merch. It's not about selling games, honestly. It's more about the merch side of things. And I think just Nintendo as a brand has been revitalized with the Switch. So I could see that happening. Unfortunately, given the sort of, the sales and marketing arm, like is it even called Nintendo Australia? I can't even remember what it's actually called.
Oh, I mean, that's what I think their Twitter handle is.
Because, well, yeah, but that's
Nintendo
no. But what I mean is like, because they're a subsidiary of the European arm of like Nintendo, right?
Oh, yeah, but I mean, if they've got a headquarter there, I'll just refer to them.
Yeah, but it's not like Nintendo of America, which actually kind of like dictates stuff for the region. I don't even think they make decisions in Australia. It's basically whatever Europe wants to do, they sort of just translate it here. But like ultimately why I'm saying that is if they ever did make a Nintendo store here, I would obviously selfishly want it to be in Sydney. But I feel like 95% chance it will be in Melbourne because that's where like what's it called? Nintendo of Australia is based in Victoria, not even Melbourne, right? It's like Scoresby or whatever.
Yeah, Scoresby.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is related. But I just want to bring up the fact that they are currently in the middle. They've been for a few years of building the big new metro station a few doors down, and all the shops there have obviously been demolished and everything. Like even the McDonald's on Swanston Street, that dodgy ass McDonald's, was removed for that massive new metro station. I don't think that's like you think that EB themselves would have been closed by now if that was an impact, but. I know that it's obviously changed the face of retail in that area in general. Maybe there's even less foot traffic there these days, but it has been a few years since those shops closed.
Do we know at all? I mean, I doubt there's a way to find out what the payment model is with this. Do they pay part of the rent? Do they?
Yeah, it's a good call.
What's the relationship with EB for this one?
I don't know. There's also a downstairs area which is the Zing Pop arm of the
Zing one,
brand, but. Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's looked like in the footage there, the actual offices of the EB Games were above that as well in that area. So clearly, I think it's probably them just paying out a rental space or maybe, percentage of profits of sales or something. So
because it's co-branded. I mean, there's a huge EB Games. I mean, it's part of EB Games, obviously, but there's also big EB Game signs and stuff on that floor. So
yeah, I really liked it because I visited Nintendo New York, so the flagship store, pretty much for America. That's their flagship store, even though they're based in Seattle, right? I should know that. I just read a whole bloody book about Nintendo. But yeah, New York is where their flagship store is, and that's really cool. Like that store, and it's actually really cool as well, Swinny. I think you appreciate this, like, you know, people's reactions to stuff like Nintendo Directs, Smash reveals.
Yeah.
You often will see a clip from the New York store reaction because they'll have the live stream there as well. And it's just the amount of shit that you can buy there. Like, you just can't buy anywhere else. Like, very classic Nintendo. It's like all inspired from Disney. You know, the specific things that you can only get in the New York store and then like in Tokyo as well. And I feel like, yeah, this was the closest thing that we had in Australia. And being a huge Nintendo fan, like, it kind of sucks. Like, for us, the closest thing in Sydney to something like this is the Gamesman. It's like this independent, you know, EB competitor. They have their little arcade and, you know, video game history little museum that's really cool. Like,
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you should check
I'd
it
love
out
to see
next
it
time you're up
sometime.
here.
Yeah, totally.
It's really cool. They're really cool, the people there. So shout out to them. But
I just want to clarify as well, the footage that's running on the YouTube clip now, like, that's how it used to look. That's not what its most recent revamp was. There's just not much good footage of when they switch branded it all. So
yeah, now there'd be no footage because it's all gone, right?
exactly.
Yeah. No, it's a bit sad. Like, but I could imagine, you know, just like the face of retail is changing so aggressively. But let's
Dude, yeah, the number of stores that, I mean, look, this is stating the obvious here. Ultimately, I think this probably closed down because it wasn't profitable, like any other store closing down. I don't think anyone just closes a store down willy-nilly. Clearly, they were probably making a loss. It wasn't worth paying the rent, whatever. But the number of stores in the city, and I'm sure Sydney's exactly the same, it's nuts. Just the number that are closed, changed for lease, that kind of stuff. It's incredible what COVID's completely destroyed a lot of stuff like that.
having spent time in Melbourne recently, I think Melbourne's way more affected than Sydney.
I reckon.
Like, I was shocked when I went to Melbourne. I was like, wow, this is like, outside of the main things like Chadstone, High Point, like a lot of those stores are still open, but they've got deals and stuff, and I think they negotiated rents to keep them there.
But the city stores,
the city ones and stuff like that, it was like, this is like stark, you know?
Yeah,
and Sydney's bad, but not as bad as that. Like, Sydney, I found, like, I need to double check if places are still open that I go to. And they're like, most of them are, but they've changed. So it's like, I'll go there. I used to be able to get lunch there. Now I can only get coffee and like set menus because I've literally just got one person working there or two people instead of like in the old days.
What's going to happen with tourism? Because, look, I'm going to say this now. I've been to many, many cities, and Melbourne is one of the dirtiest cities I've ever been to. What I would almost consider third world countries that I've been to have had cleaner cities overall.
I don't think you've been to that many third world countries.
No, but
What parts of Melbourne are you going to?
Yeah, I know.
No, like, I'm talking about the city center. I'm talking about the city center is so. It's not only, look, the construction work doesn't help it at all, but in terms of the overall feel and dirtiness, and one thing that is unrelated, but also something that I wish we did more about, is the homelessness problem that we have in Melbourne. It's huge. It's massive.
Can I just say, like, that's the actual, I don't think it's that dirty.
No. This is a totally different thing. I'm talking about actual dirty as well, not
it's
just
out of
the
control
problem.
from a people perspective in Melbourne. Like,
Yeah,
that, I
totally.
notice it as well. It's like just kind of like dodgy people in the city, just like standing around doing nothing or yelling at people. I'm like, this is like New York in the 70s or something.
It's
Like,
kind of like that, yeah.
how are they not clean? Like, it was starting to happen in Sydney and they just cracked down on it massively. They're just like, we're clearing out people. They're just sitting around doing nothing all day. Like, we just can't have that. Like, let's get rid of them. But
Look, as a tourist, I mean, I don't know what tourists are like. All I can say is anecdotally, for example, my ex-girlfriend who was from overseas, she hated Melbourne. And she traveled a lot, and I'm talking about a lot. It was one of her least favorite places in terms of how it felt and the dirtiness of it. And I maybe we don't realize that because we're there all the time, but I noticed it. I hate to admit it. I've lost the feel for it. I think it's not the great city that it once used to be.
yeah, I think it's changed as well. Like, it was pretty disappointed when I went down there. I was like pretty shocked. But maybe that's just a lockdown and things will recover.
That doesn't
Well,
help. Yeah.
I still love Melbourne.
Good for you.
Good. You're repping Melbourne. That's good, Swinny. All right, let's get on to our final story, and it is Nintendo. This is a very Nintendo themed episode, by the way.
Yeah.
Very on brand for me. So it is a very funny one. So in a headline that could be ripped straight from The Onion, reports have cropped up this week that Kanye West once pitched a game to the legendary Sweetie, you gotta like spell check the hell out of this. Shigeru Miyamoto.
That's what happens when you just like, I gotta do this.
I know you're like, it was a bit rough today. According to former IGN employee Zach Ryan, Yi, I like how you got Yi, approached Miyamoto with a pitch during E3 2015. Ryan claims he had heard this directly from Miyamoto via translator a year later. So this is all on Twitter, and he was just recounting his funniest gaming story. So Kanye had shown up. This is all quote from Zach Ryan. Kanye had shown up at the Nintendo booth unannounced and asked for an audience with Miyamoto right then and there. Kanye showed him a prototype for a video game. In it, you played as Kanye's late mother flying to heaven, set to a soundtrack conducted by Kanye himself. Miyamoto was shaking his head as he described it, not like he thought it was a bad game, but more so in the way that he sort of couldn't believe that Kanye West was pitching him a video game. Miyamoto nodded and said, "It was very interesting." There was a long pause and he added, "It was very moving." Miyamoto to Ryan, quote, "Then he laughed really hard and said, Kanye West wanted to make a game with Nintendo." And then in English, "Wow," with 2 thumbs up. Can I just say, end quote, that part of it made it feel so true to me when he said like, because he does do that. It's something he would do. So Ye would go on to announce the game only one during an event in Feb 2016, later releasing a trailer during E3 2016, and the game hasn't been seen since. And people are still waiting for it.
Yeah,
Damn, I'd be curious.
A bit of like conflicting. I was trying to understand. So that was E3 that he was pitching to Miyamoto. Then we know the timeline of when E3 is in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
Then publicly Yi announced it in February, but then I think Zach Ryan was saying he went on to announce it 2 months later. So
2
it's
weeks
like,
later, I think he's
2 weeks. Yeah. So it's maybe he kind of made it known, but he didn't like do a public announcement until later. So it's what a story.
I'd be intrigued to actually play this. I mean, I'm not a huge Yi fan, but I always felt like him and I are similar. I feel like we were both dropped. Dropped on the head as a child.
Can I please let me say something. You comparing yourself to Kanye West.
No.
Just let me have the floor.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
You comparing yourself to Kanye West is like simultaneously the most Mike and Kanye West kind of thing to do. It's insane. This guy has created so much art. He's so popular. He's like a billionaire. He's created fashion lines and everything.
And I've done nothing.
You have not. But
No.
by you comparing yourself to him, that is very Kanye West. That is very Kanye West. He in himself has compared himself to Leonardo da Vinci and
there you go, see?
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I'm a bit
What is that quote, by the way?
as a child
Sweetie, what's that quote?
on the head.
Leonardo da Vinci, Kanye West, God.
I'm a bit out of the
best
loop.
one, I love him.
Is it pronounced Yi or Yay?
Yi.
Yi, it is Yi.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yi.
I just wanted to
But
check.
no one says that anymore. That's why it
for
threw me.
Yeezy or something, isn't it?
Yeah, Yeezy. That's what most people
Yeah.
will
Well,
say
that's
now.
apparently his legal name. So apparently, so he got it changed.
Really?
Yeah, that's what the internet
Oh,
says.
wow. Yeah,
Which is
even
always
Wikipedia-
correct.
Well, Wikipedia does say, yeah, Yi is his
not?
name. Born Kanye West. Wow. And then it says commonly known as Kanye West. That's so weird.
Well, he's been Yeezus, he's been Yeezy.
Yeah.
Now
Wow.
he's
Okay. Yi. Okay. Interesting. Wait, Swinny, do you want to break the news?
But wait,
There's
there's
more.
more. Investigations by a resident sleuth integot has corroborated this report. And guess what?
Corroborated?
Corroborated. Guess what? It's old
What?
news. This is actually known a few months ago, back in December. So
Yeah, but you know what's super interesting? This story isn't really like consolidated. Like people are still a bit like, I think people just don't believe it. But I actually looked back and like, I'm actually going to plumb these podcasts. Reggie Fils-Aimé, you know, and again, hyping the section later that I'm going to review his book. He's got this like podcast that's got like 7,000 listens.
So interestingly, so Reggie talked about this on his podcast, which is called Talking Games with Reggie and Harold. But apparently there was a donation incentive or something, and this was part of the clip that only people got to hear if they donated. But that's what I read on the. I think the people that reported back on this was the website Nintendo Everything in December, and that's what they say there is that it was revealed on that.
Does say
Question:
that even in
Could
the
we
thumbnails,
could we have a similar model where people can only hear me if they donate?
No, can we have a different model where people can donate to mute you?
To meet me! Oh, brilliant! Brilliant!
Given we're going to be talking about Reggie quite a bit in a little bit, I think I like what his quote was about it. So, do you want me to?
Yeah,
read a
yeah,
little
you
bit
read
of
it,
that?
please,
because
yes.
I'm going to
Yep.
say too much about
Well,
it.
you gotta read it in his voice.
No.
Yeah.
We had so many different projects at Nintendo going on. The possibility of doing something with Kanye just wasn't there. So I had to find a way to politely decline this opportunity to work with him. I told him, Kanye, you don't want to work with us because we're tough, we're hard. All we do is push for the very best content. We would not be the type of partner you would want to work with. And he looks at me and says, Reggie, you're exactly the type of partner I want. Because of that reason, it's like, oh my gosh.
But can I just say,
Because you like my wife, my old wife, Kim.
oh my god,
What was the...
I was actually listening to some Pete Davidson stand-up where he's actually talking about Kanye. It was actually really interesting on YouTube.
But did you hear his Kanye impression just then?
I chose to ignore it.
He kind of what does he sound like? It kind of sounds like that,
But
doesn't he?
you're kind of just going for a generic black guy. But he's
That
not
wasn't
really
generic. That
that's
was like a
not
Mike
kinda how his voice
Tyson-y.
is.
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson-y
Nah,
kind
Mike
of.
Tyson's way more high pitched than that.
I feel like he just doesn't. Mike Tyson's voice does not match his physique, and I kind of feel like Yi is similar.
But yeah,
Mike, no,
but can
you
I
go,
just
you
say,
go.
because like Kanye is like a notorious, insane perfectionist, tweaking stuff, you know, driving standards that are like unmeetable. And for Reggie to say that, that's like the most
I know.
let's go
it's
crazy,
not you,
man.
it's me. Oh, come on,
Let's do
please.
it, man.
Could you imagine this? You know, like we had the trailer footage up before that he showed. Like, it
Yeah, I
actually,
can put it back up again.
That actually looks
not-
interesting.
it's an interesting concept, and he apparently in 2014 he wrote a song called Only One that was about his daughter from the perspective of his mother who'd passed away. So
Well, his mother
think
passed
it's
away
an interesting
post this
idea.
whole thing, right? Like,
It wasn't a post.
No, I think she was
Okay.
2007 or something like that.
Oh.
Or 2009, around that period, because I was looking it up earlier.
that makes, you know what? That makes so much more sense now. Because like how she died, I thought, wow, that's kind of crazy how she died, right?
Yeah.
But now it makes sense if it was that long ago. Because like Kanye was big, but not that big. Yeah, 2007. That makes so much more sense.
That's
Okay.
ages ago.
So,
Interesting. Oh, well, that's
I don't
terrible.
know. I always, I feel like we want to play games that represent us, that have characters that, are like us. And I feel like I've always associated with his mum. And this game speaks to me. I would love to actually try this game out. Okay, all jokes aside, this actually looks really interesting. And I hope that he will pursue this project somewhere else. I don't think it's a Nintendo game, to be honest. This is not a Nintendo thing.
Wow, but
It's an independent studio thing.
but if it, like yeah, it's interesting because when it happened, it wasn't like Nintendo was like flying, right? So I'm surprised they kind of dismissed it so readily, because I feel like Nintendo making a game with Kanye West would just be like, I mean, like, how would you top that announcement, Swinny?
I
probably
don't think
couldn't
you could.
actually.
I
The
don't think you could.
virality of that, just from a marketing point of view, I just almost don't understand why he just like dismissed it so quickly. To be
But I
honest,
wonder why no one else jumped on it. I wonder, Did he not
Oh,
go
'cause
to
he's
anyone
insane.
else?
'Cause he's
Did
insane
no
to
one-
work
Yeah,
with.
but it still would have been freaking awesome to get this project like this
I
out
just-
for any studio.
I just love the visual of Kanye rocking up to Nintendo booth and saying, "Where's Miyamoto? I want to show him a game." I just cannot get that visual out of my head. It's amazing. I want to see it so
Because-
much. I wish there was footage.
Well, that E3, people didn't notice him walking around the floor. And they were like, holy shit, Kanye West is here. Like, that's weird. So, like, all this, and you've got first-hand accounts from people, like, saying it happened. But
It was an
I love how
impersonator.
much of a
wild.
gamer he is, because I think, didn't he want to call an album like TurboGrafx or something like that? TurboGrafx 16.
well, yeah, and he references, like, Genesis and Super Nintendo in his songs and stuff like that. So, he's definitely a gamer. Yeah, crazy news. I think it would be awesome. I would, like, go into a Kickstarter into his game if and only if it had, like, a 3-year return period. Where it's like, I can get my money back in 3 years. Because I feel like there's a 50% chance he would never make it. You know what I mean? Or it'd take him 20 years to make the game. So I don't want to wait that long. So, all right, let's wrap up the news. And as we do always when we wrap up the news, we take all the stories that, won't fill a normal spot for us. And Swinny will summarize them each week, monotonically increasing by one word. We're up to 194 words in 1 minute. Well over 3 words per second. He's smashing it. He's prepping.
Getting his water ready. Getting
I'm
his
not ready.
throat
I'm not
lubricated.
His body is ready just to,
I am not ready.
Pumping
body-
up your next segment. Some more.
I forgot I still had to do this. All right.
And as always, I let Swinny decide when he wants to start.
Blizzard have revealed their new mobile trash Warcraft arc like Rumble. Mafia studio Hangar 13 are reportedly working on a prequel for their popular series. Survival MMO The Day Before has been delayed to March 2023. Unpacking launches for PlayStation this Tuesday. Sci-Fi Racer Redout 2 is also launching soon, coming May 26th for all platforms. Epic has partnered with Xbox to bring Fortnite back to iOS devices, whatever, via cloud streaming. Ubisoft Montreal has taken over development of the troubled Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake. All Elite Wrestling's video games have been officially named AEW Fight Forever. Activision Blizzard has been sued by New York City over Microsoft acquisition. Intel CEO has warned that the global chip shortage affecting console production will likely last until 2024. The live showcase for the Dorito Pope Summer Game Fest is happening on the 9th of June. Space MMO EVE Online is getting Microsoft Excel integration, allowing users to sync play data into spreadsheets. Elder Ring and the Stanley Parable have both had VR mods in production, and documentary YouTube channel NoClip has released an hour of unseen footage for Arcane's cancelled Half-Life game Ravenholm.
Oh, I haven't watched that footage. Well done, Swinny.
Neither. Very well done.
I thought you were
made
gonna.
it.
I thought you were gonna fail. To be fair, when you got to a point where you said, "Oh, just whatever."
Can't even pronounce iOS. Yes.
iOS.
No,
iOS.
iOS. People say iOS.
Yeah, I know. I said the iOS first, and I go,
But he
oh,
hates-
shit, did I say it wrong?
Just go with
I'm
it.
just shocked that you spelt it correctly with the small I and
I
then
know.
US.
You've just beat me
Someone
down
fix
into
that?
you beat me down into submission with bloody.
No,
this-
I pointed out your hypocrisy with it. I think that's what got
I
you.
wonder if some.
My,
Maybe that was an autocorrect.
my tweak to what you had, and I was gonna change your words, and I thought, wow, that would be really evil to do that. So I didn't. So you should appreciate that, Swinny. But I think it's interesting that with Xbox, with the cloud gaming thing, it's actually going to be free to play Fortnite. So anyone could just install cloud gaming Xbox on their iPhone and play Fortnite for free. I think that's super smart from Microsoft and gets people into Xbox as an ecosystem.
I just thought the biggest story was it coming back to iOS devices, so that's why I didn't
pretty
put
big,
that
yeah.
in there. But that's cool. I mean, you don't need gold or anything to play these games now, but I think you still need it. I think you still need Game Pass to be able to play the cloud streaming part.
Yeah, but
so,
this you
yeah.
don't. It's free.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's crazy to me. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how many people jump into that. And the EVE Online, I thought that was a joke. I thought that was like they were just taking the piss when I saw the footage from it, but it's real.
And people, it's funny reading the Reddit reaction of people who aren't into EVE Online just being like, "This is the most ridiculous announcement ever," but people love it in that community. So it's
Well,
Yeah, Stanley. Yeah, go.
no, I was just gonna say, just on the spreadsheet thing, like to me that would be helpful in many games where I like track stuff. Like if I could just directly export
Do
the
it straight
data,
in
I'm
the
like,
game,
oh,
yeah,
it's cool.
yeah.
I'll be all for that.
I had a question for Mike. So
Yo.
I think, did you have The Day Before as one of your most anticipated games?
I think it might have been, yeah.
I asking, did you know that was an MMO?
No.
awesome.
So there goes
I'm
that.
sure-
You know,
I'm
I don't
sure
even
you-
give a shit if it's delayed.
I'm sure you can probably play single player, but I'm like, oh, Mike
maybe,
anticipated it was an MMO. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
That's out. One thing that I'd be curious to play through again, and I don't know what the Stanley Parable is now on Switch as well, but it's an enhanced new
Ultimate.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Ultimate
it's on a new
something.
engine with new content and
With a
everything.
lot of
Yeah,
new content, supposedly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Definitely looking forward to playing that again. I actually need to boot the original one up to get my Don't Play It for 5 years achievement.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
That's one of the achievements. Can't touch it for 5 years. It's got to have been at least
Did
5
you
years
ever go
now.
back to that game where you had to wait 800 days or whatever it was?
No, I should go back and see
400
what
days?
happens now, actually.
I think it's
That's a good
about
point.
time, right?
About time. Yeah.
All right, let's get into our last bit of the show, which is a
All right.
feature. So Reggie Fils-Aimé, the ex-president of Nintendo of America, has released a new book called Disrupting the Game: From the Bronx to the Top of Nintendo. I have had the chance to check it out. What do I think of Regginator's story? So first, I just wanted to start with what is this game? So what is this game? What is this
Game?
book? So Reggie, president of Nintendo of America for 13 years and very much the face of Nintendo for the West. So my expectations of this book is like, okay, it's going to have like some cool focus on different Nintendo stories, bit of an autobiography. The reality of the book, though, and I'd known a little bit about his business past, is like almost, I'd say, a third of the book to almost half of the book is, you know, obviously his early life. He didn't labor that too much, but also the other business ventures that he's had post Nintendo and pre Nintendo. Like, there's a lot on that, like Pizza Hut, Procter and Gamble, you know, how he got into uni, all that kind of stuff. And then there's like 10 chapters on Nintendo, and it's a very short book. It's like only 224 pages. And the other part of it is I thought it was going to be more like an autobiography. Honestly, like, this is a business book. Like, and that was the thing that like threw me the most. Like, this is definitely a business book. Every time like he's going through his stories, he has sections, and they're called so what sections. And it's just trying to crystallize the story, his approaches, behaviors, etc., into, you know, like business principles or business advice.
Do you think that's because this was written by him, wasn't it?
Yes.
So do you think that's just because he felt that that was more natural, like he could do that as opposed to writing like almost like an actual autobiography?
No, like it was like, from what I understand, it was like an active choice. So I actually listening to the book. So I not read, but I don't even know what you say. Like, I hate saying read the audiobook. That doesn't sound right. So listen to the audiobook. Which, like, and I'll get to this later, but I think listening to the audiobook is superior to reading it, because there's a bonus part to the audiobook where there's an interview, like an exclusive interview with Jeff Keighley. And there's some really like interesting nuggets in that exclusive part that have, you know, become stories, and it's a slow news week. So everyone's
Plus,
writing
he's
stories
reading it,
about this
yeah?
book.
He reads
Yeah,
the
he
book
reads
himself.
it.
Yeah,
Which-
that would be really cool.
These days is like a non-negotiable. Like, the author reads the book. Like, that's just like par for the course now, especially for these type of books. But he said like in interviews, he said he wanted to write a business book. He wanted to try to like give that knowledge to the next generation and things like that, which is cool. But it just wasn't what I was anticipating. Like, when I started listening to it, I'm like, oh fuck, this is a business book. This is kind of weird. And weirdly enough for me, because I love business stuff, I love reading business books, and then I'm a huge Nintendo fan, you'd think it'd be like the perfect book for me, right? It definitely is on my alley, but I'll sort of get to what I ultimately feel about it later. But yeah, I wanted to just call out some of the things that like I thought were really interesting in the book. So the first is just he considers his biggest failure in Nintendo as being the launch price and the launch of the 3DS. So that being $249. So infamously, so this is more in America. I don't know if this happened in Australia, Swinny. You'd have to, maybe if you Google it while we're chatting about it. But
If they did the famous price reduction. Is that
well,
what
they
you're
had
talking
this infamous thing that happened where they launched it, it didn't land the way they thought it was, right? And they actually then decreased the price by $50 within a year or something like that, and created an ambassador program. So anyone who had bought it at full price, would get, I think it was 10 Game Boy Advance games. And some of these games were never released ever, like on the 3DS or 3DS Virtual Console or any other mechanism. Like, it was the only way you could ever get those games was through this program. And yeah, he viewed it as the biggest failure. And I'll kind of get into like it with my final thoughts later, but like, he's a marketing guy. Like, he's always been a marketing guy. Like, his whole career is about marketing. And Nintendo of America is not, the thrust of Nintendo. That's all in Japan. Like, they make the games, they come up with the ideas for the system. Effectively, Nintendo of America has, like, and this book makes it clear, and this is why it was so cool reading it. Nintendo of America has no say over the next console or what they're doing. Like, zero. Like, absolutely zero. Like, it was crazy to me to read that, and it's through a story, and it's the strongest chapter of the book, the first chapter of the book, right? About Satoru Iwata, the former president, the fourth president of Nintendo, who passed away while he was like serving as president. And effectively it was like he had a meeting with him, and it was a bit of a weird meeting because he called him back to Japan. It's like, oh, okay, this is really weird. Like, I was just in Japan a few months ago. This is super unusual. And he's like, look, I've got to tell you two things. Like, one, my cancer's come back, and, we've got all this treatment for it, but, like, it's serious. And then the second part is, I want to show you this new thing that we're working on. And it was the Switch, right? But the thing is, this was like 1 year before they announced the Switch. So, and, these things take 3, 4, 5 years. To me, it's like incredible to hear the CEO of Nintendo America is not aware of what Nintendo Japan are planning to do, and only gets looped in like a year before, like, they go to announce it. That's just phenomenal to me.
That's crazy, given how how you have to do budgets, and
Yeah.
you budget for the next financial year based on your strategy, and the strategy of launching a brand new console is pretty big.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, and then the other part of it was, like, and I'm throwing things out there, like, just as I'm sort of talking about it, is, and it just shows you about, like, the Japanese culture, and you're more aware of this when you, like, having studied Japanese and understanding the business culture a bit more than I know nothing about it, but, there's funny tidbits, like, Reggie, and, I work with very senior people at the place that I work, but
Well,
whenever...
that was close.
Yeah, I know. Reggie, when he would travel to Nintendo Japan, he would have to get a new login and password to log into the corporate Wi-Fi on his phone and laptop, personally to him. And he would have to, like, wait in line, go to the security, go, this is my credentials. And they'd go, okay, here's your password, here's your username to log in. And he'd have to do that every time he visited Nintendo Japan to be able to log in. And he would plan around his day, go, okay, I've got to get there early on the first day because I need to be able to log in and check in and everything. I'm like, fuck me. This guy is like, to me, he is a bit of the face, or he was the face of Nintendo, even though it's like just the American arm. But they don't trust him effectively, right?
You know what I think? I think Reggie was the one behind the Nintendo Giga leak. It was his revenge.
It was pissed. And then, like, the final bit of that is, like, there was this, basically, this top executive level sessions that they would have. You know how you have, like, executive leadership teams, all this other kind of stuff, right? It was this special call that they would have with the global president and some of the executive vice presidents in Japan. And Reggie was never invited to that through his whole tenure. He actually tried to get invited to it he's like, oh, I get closer. It's better if I'm closer to what's happening. Like, what's the next console that we're thinking of making? And he never got on it, like, all the way through. And yet, there was one guy who technically was a Nintendo Japan employee who'd worked in America for 25 years. I can't remember the guy's name. He's Japanese national. So technically a Nintendo Japan employee, but worked in the American office for 25 years. And he was in those calls, but he was like a level below Reggie officially it's just like really like, and I'm a huge Nintendo fan and I love business. Like, this kind of stuff to me was the best part of the book. It was like, holy shit, this is so crazy. Like, the machinations of how it works.
I wonder if Reggie had to get the book vetted by Nintendo before release.
Wow, yeah, like, dude, like, there's some stuff in the book I'm like, I don't feel like they would have approved this book, man. And even his comments about Nintendo of America, it's quite like aggressive. Like because obviously you've got the whole labor union and, labor disputes happening with Nintendo now, right?
Yeah.
And some of his commentary is pretty, I don't know, it's pretty stark, to be honest. He's like, he said some stuff like, that's not the Nintendo that I left. I was like, ooh, that's like not really what you'd be saying with a place that would want you back.
It's generally regarding like contractors and things, isn't it? And
yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother story, but it's basically like, effectively there's like two Nintendos. There's Nintendo of America employees, and then there's contractors. They call them associates there, and they're not allowed to go into the facilities and all.
Associates.
They don't even get Wi-Fi passwords.
Well, yeah, they definitely wouldn't. But they're just contractors, right? Because they're for QA and translation and sort of like they're not.
I guess, but where I work, contractors literally have exactly the same everything as a normal employee.
Well, where I work, they don't. Like, they don't even get. They're not even allowed to have phones. Like, they have to bring their own phones. So yeah, it's interesting how different companies do it, but. Yeah, like it really gives you an insight to go, wow, okay. Like, obviously, he's hooked into the most senior people in Nintendo, but then it just shows like Nintendo is so Japanese and they're dominating the company and like what they want to do and where they think, the important ideas are. And it will definitely shape my view on Nintendo and kind of like trying to guess what they're going to do, because it does show they do not care about the American market specifically. Even though the American market is where they make most of their money, they're all their ideas are from a Japanese perspective. It's very fascinating. And even when he joined the company, he was sort of reflecting, hey, look, I played video games all my life. I love the Super Nintendo. And then, when he joined, he had an Xbox and a PlayStation 2, but he didn't have a GameCube. And he's like saying, like, this is a problem. Like, and, the Nintendo at the time were like, yeah, no, like, we get that, but we don't really look at other companies. Like, we just do our thing. And we don't focus on what they do or what they think works. And you can see this through games like Splatoon, where it genuinely feels like they have not looked at how any other multiplayer shooter works and the lobbies and everything like that. Like, it's almost like they're trying to invent it themselves, like, as they go.
Does he talk at all about the launch and like that, the whole Wii U thing? Does he talk about that?
Yeah. So like he was there from like 2004. So effectively he talks about the launch of the DS, the Wii, the Wii U, the Switch, the 3DS, the DS, because he was there around that time. And also this little bad boy, I'll go back to the Wii U. This little device, the Game Boy Micro, which I love.
I didn't know you had a micro.
Yeah, of course
I should have remembered. So.
And he hates this thing. He not only didn't want to launch it in America, he actually said we should just cancel the project globally.
Why?
Look, like this didn't sell. Like he's ultimately right. He's ultimately
Have you seen
correct.
his hands? Man, he couldn't hold.
Maybe that's why.
I've got small hands, and look at it. It looks small in my hand.
The only thing smaller is the bloody Game Gear Mini thing that they made, the keychain game.
Yeah. But like for Mike, it would be the equivalent of like this. Like holding it like that. That's what Reggie looks like when he's trying to hold it. It's like ridiculous. So yeah, no, he was just saying it's impossible to hold for like a regular sized person. I've played a lot of games on this. I've got small hands, and it's like I feel like it's small, right? So for someone who had hands like Mike size hands or Reggie size hands, and Reggie's a big dude, like big dude, like 6'5" or something like that.
He's restless size.
Yeah, he's restless.
Would have been a
size.
wrestler if he wasn't president.
He's never the shortest person. He's always the tallest.
I heard an excerpt that like he's been mistaken for bodyguards at Nintendo events by like staff and things. So.
Yeah, and look, I know I'm going all over the place.
Well, security, I should say, not bodyguard, security.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the. That was the first. That was when he came out and said, I'm here to take names and kick ass and make games and all that kind of stuff, right? That was so no one knew who he was. So when he walked into E3, I think it was E3. I can't recall if it was E3 or GDC, but it was an event like that. When he walked in, he just walked straight through, right past the media. No one asked him a question.
Nice.
Like the president of Nintendo, And he was just like, no one knew him at that time, right? And like, I'll just put my cards on the table here. I never thought of Reggie as a black guy, but this book, he's
Mixed.
like, no, but like, but I don't know. I just never thought of him as a black guy, right? But he is like all the way through the book, like as a black man, you know, as the first black president of Nintendo and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, that's really interesting. Like, I know, like I'm just putting the cards on the table. I never thought of him as a black guy. I must admit, I don't really think a lot about people's races, but it just was a bit stark when I read that. And yeah, he was kind of saying, and I like, it's interesting the commentary from him, but with that anecdote about someone thinking he was a guard, because effectively he was just like looking at the show floor, Nintendo setting up, and then some Nintendo employee turned to him and goes, look, I've got credentials, like, you know, I'm meant to be here. And he's like, oh no, I'm just like observing, like I'm not a security guard. And he's like, oh, what does that say about people that they think a black guy is a security guard and he couldn't be an executive? But then I'm
I
kind
don't
of
know
a
if it's
bit
'cause
like,
he's black. I think it's because he's 6'5".
yeah, I kind of agree. He's like a big dude who's watching everyone doing stuff, right? Without any credentials himself. I'm like, I kind of get that. So yeah, no, with the Wii U, and this is like, I'll dive into a little bit of my thoughts on the book. He's a marketing guy. So I feel like it's not very brutally honest, the book. You know, everything that he is able to spin and that went well, it's like, okay, that's Reggie who solved that, right? Like the classic story is because Japan, they didn't put Wii Sports into the Wii bundle. Like that didn't happen in Japan. You bought the Wii and you bought Wii Sports. And the Wii was popular in Japan, but it wasn't like in the West where it was bundled and, you know, parents, grandparents, everyone would play it. They'd get it straight away, right? And that was 100% Reggie pushing that. And everyone admits that, right? So, you know, big win, everything like that. But with the Wii U, he doesn't really he doesn't call out anything of his failings with the Wii U. It sort of just says, you know, it released and then we had to do like console bundles straight away. And then we had to do special edition consoles. And we all knew within a year, it's like, that's not a good sign, right? And the inventory is building up. They killed the white Wii U, which is a smaller 8GB model. And they just knew, like, we need to bring out a new console. The other thing that they said, and I don't know if this has ever been confirmed, and this is kind of going into what you're saying, Swinny. I definitely don't think this book was approved by Nintendo, but it would have been like, he would have had lawyers vetting it to make sure that they can defend things and it's not commercial secrets. But he said they decided to delay Breath of the Wild to coincide with the Switch. Now, I mean, it released on day one, the Switch released with the Wii U. It's like kind of like, duh, that's obvious. But the way he wrote it, it felt like maybe that game could have come out like a year before or even earlier. Because he said in the book that game was slated and they felt like it would be ready by like 2014. And it came out in 2017. I'm like, fuck, man. Did they, like, if they delay that game by a year and a half, like, as you know, you're a Wii U owner when it was live, that's pretty dirty. Like, that's pretty dirty. Because they also removed features from the Wii U version of that game.
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, you got to start making decisions around your new stuff.
Well, exactly. And that's the kind of game that sells the console, so...
Yeah, no, I get it from a business point of view, but, like, as the 15 million people who bought a Wii U... Like, you'd be filthy about it, right? But, like, where I was a bit frustrated with the book and, like, getting back to the Wii part is that, like, sorry, the Wii U part is, for me, and I remember having this conversation with you, Swinny, the Wii U was marketed really poorly, along with being a bit of a complicated system, right?
Horribly.
I said at the time, like, I wasn't really, like, super switched on with gaming. I know what a Wii was, but I literally didn't know what a Wii U was.
Yeah.
And when you spoke to me about it, I'm like, what the fuck is a Wii U? Is that like a gamepad accessory to the Wii? Like, is this, you buy this gamepad thing and it connects to the Wii? Like, I literally didn't have a clue about it. I feel like that is like the name. Like, I've never been like, oh, the Wii, what a stupid name, right? Like, even he actually writes about that in the book as well. It's like, oh, we knew people were going to make fun of the name, but we liked the name, so we went with it. But I feel like the Wii U is just a shit name. Like, it doesn't, like, even if it was called Wii 2, like, I feel like someone like me who wasn't like super into it, I'd know, okay, this is like the next Wii. It's like
What about
PlayStation
Wii
2.
with 2 more eyes? The Roman numeral 2. So it's Wii.
Wii. But again, like in the book, he doesn't at all call out anything that he did wrong in that space. And I'm like, dude, you're the head of marketing, you're the head of like Nintendo of America. You could have called it something different. Like I think they would have had the ability to do that. And he didn't. So I feel like that's the biggest failing of the whole book. It's like Nintendo made a lot of like errors in the time that he ran it. I think they did a lot more good than they did wrong. But on balance, the book does not really cover the bad stuff at all. Like it's very positive to what he's done, and very kind of like, I wanted it to be priced at $199, the 3DS, but Nintendo Japan forced me to do $249, and then we had to reverse, and that was my biggest failure. But I'm like, but you've just spent a whole bunch of time talking about how you didn't want it to be priced at $249.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to the part where he wasn't even allowed to go to their meetings at a top level, and going back to the part where they were trickling information way too late, it seems like Nintendo controlled everything. That he was almost, I wouldn't call him a puppet in that sense, because he wasn't, nothing like that, but
we're just going back to this. Like, he was at the
had.
company when they released the Game Boy Micro, right? He didn't know about the Game Boy Micro until about 3 months before it launched. Like, he didn't actually know what it was.
So what's his role in the end? You know what I mean? He runs the company, but he doesn't really run the company.
No, but
he runs the American marketing arm of the company.
Yeah, but this literal little handout that I love, and I want to get the Famicom faceplates when I'm in Japan, but because you can actually remove the faceplates of this mic.
Ah, cool.
So this triggered a whole bunch of change at Nintendo of America. Because he like reflected, it's like, how ridiculous is it that I don't know about this fucking handheld that, by the way, it's priced so expensively and the DS was out. It's like, what are we trying to do here? We've got the Game Boy Advance and then we've got the DS. It's like, it doesn't make any sense, like from a strategy point of view.
I remember everyone was confused when it was announced as well.
Yeah, and also you lose stuff with this. Like, you can't play Game Boy games. Like, I think this is the only Game Boy Advance you can't play Game Boy games. So it's just like really weird.
All I know is that I definitely miss Reggie as the face of like Western Nintendo.
Yeah.
Doug Bowser seems like a
was a
decent
character.
dude, but Reggie just felt like he had that connection with the community. And, you look at obviously, and Iwata was the same as well. But
Yeah.
it feels, everything that Nintendo do publicly now with their presentations feel way more disconnected than they ever were. And they're in a great position financially, business-wise, and they're killing it. But I think as a fan, and as a fan that's grown up with Nintendo, it definitely doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, I think, and he was a huge driver of that. He didn't actually, disappointingly, he didn't talk much about like Nintendo Direct. Like, I was kind of hoping he'd have a bit more verbatim on Nintendo Direct, but he talked around it, like around the strategy of, wanting to get people excited about things that are coming up, where they're at right now, engaging with the fan base. He did speak about, pre E3, like, let's put a presentation together, put it out there. You know what I mean? Like, so like, they totally changed the game in that space, and everyone has finally caught up and copied them, and we'll see how Xbox does, because their like presentation's like a month away for Bethesda and Microsoft, I think. We called it out in your Min For The Swin. But yeah, the only, like, just going back to Iwata and him, so the guy who's actually the current global president of Nintendo, that I wouldn't remember his name if I had a bet, and I'm like, we're following this stuff day to day. I don't know if you remember his name.
I was trying to think of it earlier, and I cannot remember.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Furukawa, right? So he's from the Pokemon side and then jumped in. I think you're on mute, Mike, by the way.
So I was saying, because Reggie's a cool name.
I was kind of thinking of just letting that run
Reggie.
for the rest of the show.
You should have just let it run, yeah.
No, Reggie is the global. It's a
cool name.
Reggie was a president of Nintendo America, but this is the global head. This is like the Japanese head, Furukawa. But again, going into how weird the company is, like when Iwata was like, like ultimately dying, and Reggie wanted to visit him, like in hospital, and they're like, this doesn't happen in Japanese culture. This is like super taboo, right? You just can't visit someone you work with. Only friends visit people who are dying or sick, right?
Okay.
And then he eventually just kept on pushing, and it was like, eventually it was decided he's visiting as a friend. That's how they accepted it, right? But the crazy thing about it is the person who coordinated all of this and was like the person organizing the trip for Reggie and everything like that was Furukawa. Like, it wasn't some other person. It was like literally Furukawa, who's now the current global president. He's like negotiating with Reggie, like what he's allowed to do or come and go see him. And then he was like pissed with him a bit. So Furukawa is like a really native English speaker, basically, because he spent a whole bunch of time in Europe. So he's one of the few Nintendo Japan execs who would just speak in English to the English execs, whereas Awada speaks English, but he would always still have a Japanese translator. And Reggie said in the book, he's like, I think he did that so then he got extra time to think of like a response or an answer. So he'd hear it in English and then hear it in Japanese. It's like, okay, I've got double the time now to respond. But yeah, Furukawa, it's like, he was actually a bit pissed at Reggie effectively. He's like, because you've done this and people have heard about it.
You
now
have dishonored our company.
No, it's more that other senior Japan execs have now visited Awada.
No, everyone wants to go visit him.
He's like,
oh my God.
He's like, this is unacceptable, like to happen. So, yeah, very like it. Look, it's a super fascinating book. That I just want to shout out like the whole Mother 3 thing. Like, I know that the news has already come out, but it's only in the audio book, which is kind of like you'd be pissed if you bought the book, but in the audio book, they've got the extra interview with Jeff Keighley and Reggie. And they talk about Mother 3, and again, there's no way this was like vetted by Nintendo or like approved by them, but he's like, yeah, they came really close. They did Earthbound Beginnings. Now, they already had that translated, by the way. So, but they never released it in the West. So they released that on the Virtual Console, and they were discussing, yeah, do we just translate Mother 3? Like, we always get bothered about it. And it got back to them saying, well, Earthbound didn't sell in America when it came out, so there's just not much interest for Mother 3. Like, this is like, they're so Japanese. It's so Japanese.
Damn. It's a PR gain. It's not a financial gain. Come on.
This is what I kind of love about Nintendo, their insanity, that they're literally going back to like 1995, of course, 1995 to say, well, the sales in 1995 of Earthbound in America were not strong, so we do not want to translate the game in like 2015. Right? Like, it's so Nintendo. It's so funny. It's so odd. And also, by the way, people have done like fan translations. Like,
Amazing fan translations.
Nintendo is like the last company in the world to ever do this, but they genuinely could easily contact those people. Because there's a set list of people. It's not like a million people. They could just go to those people and go, we'll give you some royalties for this. You've done a great job. And you'll be in the credits. And can we take your translation? So, the cost would be like, they could make the cost like literally
Minimum.
50 grand. Right? Yeah. Something like that. And make a mozza on this game. Just release it digitally. I mean, like, let's be real, Swinny. If they release like a special edition for like $499 of Mother 3... people would buy it. Like, I'm not saying it would sell like millions, but they could make a bit of money on this game.
It's got to have scratch and sniff things.
Yeah, true. In an oversized box, right? But it's so Nintendo. And this book, the best part of it is that it sort of, highlights that. So yeah, just getting to my overall thoughts. Look, it's a short book. It's like 224 pages. So it never overstays its welcome. But for me, it never really like has a killer punch, or there's nothing really kind of like massively like, oh my God, that's such a good insight. Because I like the business side of things. And honestly, all the business stuff is super generic. It's like so fucking generic. Like, it feels like read 100 business books and it's just regurgitating it. It doesn't have a specific lens to things. Like, he even talks about really great business books like Blue Ocean Strategy, Innovator's Dilemma, some of these books, but they have like a very interesting theme. Like, you need to look for a blue ocean versus a red ocean. Red ocean is lots of sharks in the water, lots of blood. You need to go for the blue ocean where there's no sharks and dominate in that space, right? Interesting business idea. But this book, there's kind of like no thread to it. It's just random shit of like, be accountable, make sure people understand what they need to do. Listen to people, but then be tough if you need to. It's like, fuck, this is just like super generic advice that you would like see generated in like some kind of like YouTube clip.
Speaking of YouTube clips, I don't know if you noticed or it's just on my screen, but when you said it's got no, what did you say, specific lens or something?
Punch or
You went out of focus.
because I put my hand up.
I think your
or something.
camera is set autofocus, yeah. Like, good timing.
But like, what I'll do now is I'll characterize this as how could I rate this book if it was a Nintendo console, right? So this is a bit different way to do it.
Okay.
This book is not a Nintendo Switch or a Super Nintendo, right? Where just like absolute bangers, like every chapter is awesome and everything like that. I would put this book as a Nintendo 64. And I've thought about this and why, right?
Okay, just a quick question though. What are you? Are there other Nintendo books to compare it against? How does the comparison work relative to what? I don't get it. Are you kind of saying like Switch is a really good console, and I don't know, that thing you just showed me is a really shit console? That's the scale. I'm like, I don't know what the scale is. I don't know what a good console is for Nintendo. And what
is this
isn't.
a weird thing to say, or is this like Mike an idiot?
I think Integot should finish his thought.
Okay.
But do you understand what I'm saying, Swinny? I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm a little confused because I like 64 more than Switch, but I know what
That's
you're
what I
saying.
mean.
know what
I'm
you're saying.
confused.
I
What's
know
good,
what you're
what's
saying.
bad?
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I like when I was even thinking of this, I was like, the one thing is Swinny's an asshole and goes, yeah, but I really love the 64.
I do.
What I would say is that this is like the Nintendo 64, right? So just like this book, the Nintendo 64 is punctuated with games that are like games that you legitimately could say are the best game of all time. I could mount an argument. Mario 64 is the best game of all time. Ocarina of Time is the best game of all time. There's multiple games where you go, these are just 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100 games potentially, right? And there's like 1/3 of the console that is full of racing games, right? That are, and arcade games, right? And that is shit, right?
Gotcha.
And there's big flaws in the library, like 2D games, kind of shit on the console. Right?
RPGs.
No RPGs. There's like a game called like, what is it, Hero Quest or whatever RPG, and that's shit.
It's Quest 64.
Quest 64, that's right, Quest 64. And that's what I think about the book. That there's like, I could literally say to you, Swinny, because I know you'd be maybe on the fence of reading this. I'm like, read chapter 1, read chapter blah, read chapter that, and you get the most out of the book, right?
Okay.
Because there's just like a lot of stuff in there that's like racing games. And I'm like, this is like, I don't really need this. Like, it's not brilliant advice. It's not super interesting. It feels like Reggie patting himself on the back a little bit.
So it's the Top Gear rally of business and video games.
It's not the V-dub racing.
Okay.
It's, just the generic. Yeah, so look, and if you take that attitude, I think you'll be fine. Like, if you're a Nintendo fan, yeah, I think it's worth a read. And you know what chapters are just the Nintendo chapters. I'd kind of almost say skip the other chapters. But if it's for business, I definitely wouldn't rate this book as a business book. There's no like clear thread of, or idea. There's no idea in this book. It's just generic advice, which I don't understand why he structured it like that personally. So, but ultimately, I like the book, Nintendo 64. I like that console. It's like sitting over there, I think, right now. So it's not like I hate it or anything, but yeah, I'm sure no one on the internet has said that disrupting the game is the Nintendo 64 equivalent of consoles. So
no, that's a unique take, and thank you for that review. It's I know it's everyone out there has been like, oh, this is just the highlights and not talking about what is the overall experience of the book that I've, like the obviously video game news websites, that's what they do. You get the headline, but it's good to hear the actual thing as a whole.
No, cool. Awesome.
Nice.
So we are now in the outro. What are we doing next week? What's the next week's show, Swinny?
I don't know. Mike's doing a tier list, aren't you?
What?
What would you do a tier list on, Mike? What could you do a tier list on?
There's people out there to do tier lists, and they don't have to play every single game in something
No, I know
to
that,
rank it.
but
That's
Well,
all.
at the
That's just
moment,
a veiled insult to me.
at the moment I seem to be doing a tier list of games I started playing but never did more than 30 minutes.
you can't do a tier list
Which games have I only played for 30 minutes that I like the most?
I
I can't
will-
really do a tier list. I don't have a a thing, a genre, or anything that I really
I want to see
enjoy.
you do a pornographic Tetris tier list because there's enough of them out there to do a tier list.
I guess there are, but I've only really played 2 or 3. So
Well, that's why you got to do some research,
This would have to be for a Patreon exclusive episode. This is not something that would go live on YouTube.
no. And it'd have to be something that I don't have to spend 2 weeks playing those games again for, because I just don't have the time. So it'd have to be. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see.
The news is quite light, so maybe next week, Swinny, we could be doing your Final Fantasy tier list, Battle System tier list.
But who knows what
Maybe.
happens? Maybe something big happens during the week.
Maybe it's gonna. I mentioned it's gonna be a bit of a feature, maybe 40, 50 minutes. So yeah, I'd like to be able to do it next week, but we'll see. We'll see.
And then also a game of some other year. Like, we've got to decide now that we've bumped Earthbound and pushed
Warcraft 2.
Warcraft 2. Are we just going to cover that?
Yeah, I'd want a little bit more than a week to.
Yeah,
probably
definitely more than a week.
Play that. Even though
Couple of
I've
weeks.
played it, it's been like, God, I played it in the late 90s. So,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
but yeah,
All right.
it's not like you can watch a YouTube narrative recap on Warcraft.
That's true. All right, with that, we'll say bye-bye.
Ciao, peeps.
See ya.